The mind is a fascinating, complex system capable of amazing feats, but it is also surprisingly unreliable. One of the most intriguing examples of this unreliability is the phenomenon of false memories, where the brain fabricates vivid recollections of events that never actually happened. Despite their inaccuracy, these memories often feel just as real as genuine ones, carrying the same emotional weight and vivid sensory details. The creation of false memories highlights the mind's suggestibility, the malleable nature of memory, and the way our brains constantly reconstruct experiences rather than replaying them like a video recording. Memory was once thought to be a fixed, accurate representation of past events, a kind of mental archive we could visit at will. However, research over the past several decades has shown that memory is not a static entity. It is dynamic, fluid, and constantly being updated. Every time we recall a memory, we are not simply retrieving it, we are actively reconstructing it. During this reconstruction process, errors can slip in without us even realizing it. A forgotten detail might be filled in with something plausible. A fleeting suggestion might alter an emotional tone, or the influence of others might reshape an event in our minds entirely. Psychologists like Elizabeth Loftus have conducted groundbreaking research on the subject of false memories. Loftus's experiments demonstrated how easy it is to implant completely fabricated memories into a person's mind. In one famous study, participants were told a story about being lost in a shopping mall as a child, a story that had never actually happened to them. Many participants not only believed the fabricated story, but even added vivid details, describing the feeling of panic, the smell of the food court, or the kind stranger who helped them. This showed that with just a little suggestion, the brain can create a fully fleshed-out experience that feels completely authentic. Several factors contribute to the creation of false memories. Suggestion is a major one. Even subtle hints from others can seed doubt or plant new ideas. The way questions are phrased can also alter memories. For example, if a person is asked, "How fast was the car going when it smashed into the other vehicle?" rather than "hit the other vehicle," they are more likely to remember the accident as being more severe than it actually was. Emotion is another powerful influence. High-stress situations, like crimes or accidents, often result in particularly vivid but error-prone memories. The heightened emotions make people feel more confident about their recollections, even though those recollections are often distorted. False memories are not merely an academic curiosity. They have real-world implications. In the legal system, eyewitness testimony can be the cornerstone of a case, yet it is notoriously unreliable. People can be absolutely certain that they saw a particular person commit a crime, even if that person had no involvement whatsoever. Misidentifications have led to wrongful convictions and have devastated lives. The Innocence Project, which works to exonerate wrongly convicted individuals, has found that eyewitness misidentification was a factor in the majority of the cases they reviewed. Understanding the fragility of memory can help improve investigative techniques, ensuring that interviews are conducted in ways that minimize the risk of contaminating witnesses' recollections. The experience of false memories also touches on everyday life in less dramatic but still significant ways. Families sometimes argue over events that different members remember completely differently. Two siblings might have entirely different versions of a childhood trip, each one vividly convinced that their own memory is the correct one. Couples might bicker over who said what and when, each feeling baffled by the other's seeming inability to recall the truth. In reality, both people might be honestly remembering their own reconstructed versions of events, and neither one is deliberately lying. Our brains naturally fill in gaps in memory to create coherent narratives. We do not like cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable feeling of holding two conflicting ideas, so our minds smooth over inconsistencies, even if it means adjusting the facts. This storytelling instinct helps us maintain a stable sense of identity and continuity over time, but it also opens the door to inaccuracies. In a sense, false memories are a byproduct of the very mechanisms that make our memories so valuable and flexible. Dreams, imagination, and real experiences all intertwine in complex ways. Sometimes an imagined event can be encoded into memory so deeply that it feels real, particularly if it is rehearsed or thought about repeatedly. Over time, the line between "I imagined it" and "it happened" becomes blurred. This is why simply imagining a conversation, a vacation, or a confrontation can eventually feel like an actual memory. Repetition strengthens memory traces, whether or not they are accurate. Social media and photographs can also play a role in shaping and distorting memories. Looking at pictures of an event can enhance true memories, but can also create memories of things that were never actually experienced. The brain incorporates these images into the narrative, whether they are genuine or staged. Even knowledge of the phenomenon does not make a person immune to false memories. In fact, the confidence we place in our memories can sometimes make the realization of their fallibility even more shocking. No one likes to think that their recollection of important life events might be partly or wholly invented, but humility about the accuracy of our memories is crucial. Being aware of how malleable memory is encourages critical thinking, fosters empathy in disagreements, and promotes caution in high-stakes situations where accurate recollection is vital. False memories are a testament to the brain's incredible creativity and its constant drive to make sense of the world. Rather than being a sign of weakness, the ability to reshape memories can be seen as part of the brain's overall mission to construct a cohesive, meaningful narrative out of the chaos of experience. Understanding how and why false memories occur not only deepens our appreciation for the mind's complexity, but also reminds us to approach our own recollections and those of others with a healthy dose of skepticism and compassion. Why time flies is a question almost everyone starts to ask as they grow older. Life seems to move faster and faster the more years we live. Childhood felt endless, with summers that stretched on forever and school years that felt packed with events and emotions. Waiting for something exciting, like a birthday or a holiday, was almost unbearable because time dragged so slowly. But then, somewhere along the way, the pace of life seemed to shift. Days started blending into weeks, weeks into months, and years seemed to disappear almost without warning. We look back and wonder how it can already be another new year, another birthday, another major milestone, and it feels almost as if time has been slipping away unnoticed. There are many reasons why time seems to speed up as we grow older, and most of them have to do with how our brains perceive time, record memories, and react to the routines we build into our lives. One major explanation for why time feels faster is the idea of proportionality. When you are very young, a year is a huge part of your life. For a 5-year-old, 1 year is 20% of their entire existence. It is a massive portion of everything they have ever known. But for someone who is 50, 1 year is only 2% of their life experience. Because each year becomes a smaller fraction of your total life lived, it feels like it passes more quickly compared to the larger number of years you have behind you. Even if every day is the same length, our perception of a year shrinks in proportion to the time we have already lived, making each one feel shorter and faster. Memory also plays a huge role. When we are children, everything is new. We are constantly learning, encountering new experiences, and forming new memories. Novelty grabs our attention and makes experiences feel longer and richer. A day filled with new experiences feels packed and stretched out because our brain is busy recording everything carefully. In contrast, when we fall into routines as adults, we have fewer novel experiences. Going to work, doing chores, running errands, all of it blends together because our brain recognizes the patterns and stops paying close attention. Without new memories being formed, weeks and months can feel like they passed in a flash because in retrospect, there were fewer standout moments. Our sense of time is closely tied to how many memorable events we pack into a period. If you go on a vacation to a new country, every sight, sound, and flavor is new. And when you think back on that trip, it feels long and detailed. In contrast, a month of daily commuting to work might seem to disappear without a trace, because nothing particularly new or different happened to mark the passage of time. The more novelty we experience, the more memories we create, and the fuller and slower time feels. When life becomes more repetitive, time seems to speed up because we are not laying down those rich memory markers. Another factor is emotional intensity. Childhood is filled with strong emotions. Small events feel huge, and experiences are often wrapped in excitement, fear, joy, or sadness. These intense emotions carve deep memories that we later recall with vivid detail. As adults, our emotional reactions tend to level out. We are less surprised, less overwhelmed, and often less deeply moved by the same kinds of events. This emotional smoothing reduces the number of vivid memories and compresses our experience of time. Without the emotional highs and lows that stretch and deepen our memories, time feels like it is racing by. Attention and presence also shape our perception of time. When we are fully engaged in what we are doing, time seems to slow down. Think about how a single afternoon spent hiking in nature or having a deep conversation can feel much longer and more meaningful than an afternoon spent mindlessly scrolling through a phone. Yet much of modern adult life is designed to pull our attention in 100 different directions at once. Multitasking, rushing through responsibilities, and constant distractions prevent us from being fully present, which robs experiences of their depth and makes time feel like it evaporates. Technology, especially, has a big impact. Endless scrolling, binge-watching shows, rapid-fire emails and notifications create a fragmented sense of time. We move quickly from one thing to another without fully processing or savoring any of them. Our attention is so divided that very little is recorded deeply in memory, making days, weeks, and even years seem shorter in retrospect. Life speeds by when we are not truly paying attention to it. On a deeper, psychological level, growing older makes us more aware of time itself. As children, the future feels limitless, but as adults, we become more conscious of time's limits. We start to notice how quickly the seasons change, or how fast children grow, and how fleeting milestones become. This growing awareness creates a sense of urgency and can make time feel like it is slipping away even faster. It is not just that time feels faster, it is that we understand more keenly than ever before that time is finite. Despite all these factors, there are ways to slow down the feeling that time is racing past us. One way is to seek out novelty even in small ways. Trying new activities, visiting new places, meeting new people, and learning new skills can help fill our lives with fresh experiences and rich memories. Mindfulness, the practice of paying full attention to the present moment, can also stretch our perception of time. When we slow down, notice the details, and engage deeply with what we are doing, we create stronger memories and make time feel fuller. Living intentionally, creating variety, and savoring life's small moments can all help us feel more connected to time, rather than feeling like we are chasing after it. Why time flies is ultimately tied to how we live, how we remember, and how we pay attention. Life speeds up when we stop noticing it, but when we live fully, we can stretch time, fill it with meaning, and make each moment count. Worlds built in dreams is one of the most mysterious and beautiful abilities of the human mind. Every night, as we fall into sleep, our brains begin to create entire universes within seconds, full of people, landscapes, stories, and emotions. These dream worlds can feel as real as anything we experience while awake. They are detailed, immersive, and often completely surprising, crafted with no conscious effort, no blueprint, and no time for preparation. It is as if the mind, freed from the rules and limitations of waking life, becomes a master artist, designing scenes and scenarios out of pure thought and memory fragments. We move through these worlds without questioning how they came to be, accepting impossible physics, strange characters, and shifting timelines with complete trust. Dreams are built incredibly quickly because of the way the brain operates during sleep. During the REM stage, which stands for rapid eye movement, the brain's activity is almost as high as when we are awake. Different parts of the brain light up in a chaotic yet fascinating dance. The visual centers create rich imagery. The emotional centers flood the dream with feelings, and the parts of the brain responsible for critical thinking quiet down, allowing for the bizarre and the illogical to feel perfectly natural. In this state, the brain can piece together flashes of memory, bits of imagination, and unconscious desires into seamless living environments. A single dream might take place across several locations, involve multiple characters, and shift in tone and mood without ever feeling unnatural at the time. One of the most astonishing parts of dream worlds is how complete they can seem. In a dream, you might walk through a city you have never seen before, detailed down to the cracks in the sidewalks and the faces of strangers passing by. You might enter a house that has never existed, but still feel familiar with its layout. You might speak languages you do not consciously know, or perform actions that defy all logic, like flying or breathing underwater. The brain creates these experiences instantly, filling in all the textures, sounds, and emotions without hesitation. Even though dreams are often strange and surreal, they feel utterly real in the moment, and it is only upon waking that we recognize how strange they really were. Dreams are often drawn from pieces of our real experiences, but they are rarely exact replicas. The brain is not replaying memories, it is remixing them, blending fragments of reality with pure invention. A face you see in a dream might be a combination of several people you have met. A building might blend the architecture of different cities you have visited. Time itself often behaves strangely in dreams. You might live through what feels like hours of events in just a few minutes of real time. The brain's ability to compress, stretch, and distort time within dreams adds to the feeling of complexity and fullness that dream worlds possess. The emotional reality of dreams is another powerful element. Often, dreams are charged with intense feelings, joy, fear, sadness, excitement, that are just as vivid as anything felt in waking life. Sometimes, the emotional impact of a dream can linger long after waking. Even when the details have faded, you might wake up feeling euphoric, anxious, or nostalgic, carrying with you the residue of a world that existed only for a brief moment inside your mind. Dreams have the ability to touch deep emotional places that we might not even access during the day, offering insights, challenges, and comfort in ways we do not always understand. Lucid dreams, where the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming, show just how interactive and creative these worlds can be. In a lucid dream, a person can sometimes shape and control the dream environment, making conscious choices about where to go or what to do. This blending of unconscious creativity and conscious control reveals how closely dreams are tied to both the spontaneous and deliberate powers of the mind. Even without lucid control, dreams demonstrate that the brain is capable of building, exploring, and reacting to entire realities in a way that is fluid and instinctive. Science still does not fully understand why we dream, but many theories suggest that dreaming helps with memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and problem solving. By constructing dream worlds, the brain may be simulating scenarios, practicing responses, and integrating experiences into our deeper selves. Dreams could be a form of mental exercise, allowing us to rehearse life's challenges and explore possibilities without real-world consequences. They could also be a way for the mind to express and process emotions that are too complex or subtle to handle while awake. Whatever the purpose, the act of building worlds in dreams demonstrates the incredible, creative nature of the human brain. What is even more fascinating is how quickly we forget most of our dreams. It is estimated that within 5 minutes of waking, we forget half of what we dreamed, and within 10 minutes, almost all of it can vanish. These worlds, rich and vast in the moment, often disappear like mist in the morning sun. Yet for the time they exist, they are real to us. They affect us emotionally, sometimes spiritually, and they remind us that our inner world is as vast and mysterious as the universe outside us. Worlds built in dreams is a testament to the mind's endless ability to create, imagine, and feel. Every night, without effort, we become travelers, explorers, and creators of realities that are limited only by the boundaries of our own subconscious. In the brief space between falling asleep and waking up, we hold entire worlds inside us, crafted by a brain that never truly rests and a spirit that is endlessly curious. Dreams show us that even when we think we are doing nothing, our minds are alive, building, imagining, and exploring the infinite possibilities of existence. Constant change is one of the most profound truths of being human. You are never exactly the same person twice. Every day, every hour, every moment, something inside you shifts. It might be something small, like a new idea you hear on a podcast or a brief conversation with a stranger. It might be something larger, like falling in love, facing a setback, or losing someone you care about. Whether we realize it or not, these experiences leave marks on us. They shape how we think, what we value, and how we see the world. Even the simple act of waking up in a slightly different mood, with a different set of thoughts buzzing through your mind, means you're not exactly who you were yesterday. Change is often subtle, so subtle that we don't always notice it happening. It's easy to imagine that we are static beings, anchored in the identities we formed years ago. But the truth is, our identities are like rivers, constantly flowing, never quite the same from one moment to the next. Your body is physically changing all the time. Cells are dying and regenerating. Your brain is rewiring itself in response to new experiences. Your memories are shifting too, becoming fuzzier or more polished depending on how often you revisit them. Even your personality traits, which feel like permanent fixtures, can and do evolve over the course of a lifetime. Sometimes the change is dramatic and obvious. Think about moments when you faced a major life decision, when you traveled somewhere new, when you started a new job, or when you faced an unexpected challenge. Those experiences may have pushed you to think differently, act differently, or see yourself differently. You may not have even realized how much you were changing at the time. It's only when you look back that you recognize how far you have come. Other times, the change is gradual, creeping up so slowly that you only notice it when you compare who you are now to who you were 5 or 10 years ago. Our relationships with others also drive change. Every person we meet leaves an imprint on us. Some people challenge us, inspire us, or teach us lessons that shift our understanding. Some people break our hearts and force us to rebuild ourselves in new ways. Even casual encounters can plant seeds that eventually grow into new perspectives. Human connection is a mirror that reflects back not just who we are, but who we might become. In the constant dance of relationships, we are always adapting, always evolving. Our inner thoughts and emotions are not static either. We might hold certain beliefs passionately at one point in life, only to outgrow them later as our experiences broaden. We might think we know ourselves fully, only to be surprised by how we react to a new situation. Life tests us in unexpected ways, revealing strengths we didn't know we had or vulnerabilities we hadn't yet faced. Each of these discoveries adds a new layer to who we are, creating a constantly shifting mosaic of identity. Even our dreams and goals change over time. What we wanted so desperately at one stage in life may no longer matter to us later. New passions emerge. Old priorities fade. Our sense of purpose evolves as we learn more about ourselves and the world around us. Holding on to rigid ideas about who we are or what our lives should look like can sometimes cause pain because it clashes with the natural reality of constant change. Embracing change instead of resisting it allows us to grow in ways we might never have anticipated. Change can be frightening because it reminds us that nothing is permanent, not even ourselves. But it is also incredibly freeing. It means we are never trapped. No mistake, no failure, no bad decision defines us forever. We are allowed to outgrow versions of ourselves that no longer fit. We are allowed to shed old skins and step into new possibilities. Every morning we wake up with the chance to be someone slightly different, slightly better, slightly closer to the person we want to become. This constant change also connects us to the broader flow of life. Nature itself is a never-ending cycle of growth, decay, and rebirth. The seasons turn, rivers carve new paths, trees shed leaves and sprout new buds. In the same way, we are part of that rhythm. We are not separate from the process of life renewing itself. We are it. Our ability to change is not a weakness, but a sign of being deeply alive. Recognizing that we are always changing invites compassion for ourselves and for others. We can forgive our past selves for the things we didn't know. We can be patient with the parts of ourselves that are still growing. We can offer that same patience and forgiveness to others, understanding that they too are works in progress, shaped by forces we may not see. Every person we meet is mid-transformation, just like we are. In the end, constant change is what keeps life vibrant and full of possibility. If we stayed exactly the same, life would lose its flavor, its mystery, and its hope. Change brings challenges, yes, but it also brings renewal. It brings unexpected friendships, new passions, deeper wisdom, and a richer appreciation for the fleeting beauty of every moment. You are not the same person you were yesterday, and you won't be the same person tomorrow. And that's not something to fear, it's something to celebrate. Simulated reality is the idea that what we experience as life might not be the base reality at all. Instead, we could be living inside an incredibly advanced computer simulation, created by beings far more technologically evolved than we are. It sounds like science fiction, something out of a movie, but serious philosophers, scientists, and thinkers have taken the question very seriously. The more we learn about technology, consciousness, and the nature of the universe, the more the idea seems not just possible, but strangely compelling. If it is possible for civilizations to reach a level where they can simulate entire worlds, including conscious beings within them, then the argument goes that there might be many more simulated realities than real ones. And if that is true, the chances that we are living in one of the simulations could be incredibly high. One of the most famous arguments for this idea comes from philosopher Nick Bostrom, who suggested that if any civilization becomes advanced enough to run simulations of conscious beings, and if they choose to do so, then simulated realities would far outnumber the original reality. If simulated beings are indistinguishable from real ones in terms of experience and self-awareness, then we would have no reliable way to know if we were in the original universe or in one of the many layers of simulation. The odds, based purely on probability, might favor the idea that we are simulated. It is a dizzying thought. Everything you feel, see, touch, and remember could be data flowing through some vast computational system. Even our doubts about the simulation could themselves be part of the program. There are other reasons why the simulation theory captures so much attention. One reason is the way the universe itself seems to behave. Physics at the smallest levels sometimes resembles the kind of behavior we might expect from a system that is being processed by some kind of computer. Quantum mechanics, for example, shows that particles behave differently depending on whether they are being observed, almost as if the universe is saving resources, only rendering details when someone is looking. This sounds eerily similar to how video games work, where graphics are only fully processed when the player moves into a new area. Some scientists have even speculated that if there are limits to how small space and time can be divided, similar to how digital screens have pixels, that could be evidence of a coded, simulated structure underneath what we perceive. Advances in our own technology also push the idea further into the realm of possibility. Virtual reality is improving rapidly. In just a few decades, we have gone from simple pixelated games to immersive 3D worlds where people can interact, build, and live out alternate lives. Imagine what virtual reality could be like in 1,000 years, or 10,000. If humanity survives and continues to develop technology, it is reasonable to think that we could create simulated worlds so realistic that the beings inside would have no idea they were living inside a simulation. If we can imagine doing it, then it is fair to ask whether it has already been done, and whether we are inside one of those creations right now. Some people find the idea unsettling, while others find it strangely comforting. If we are in a simulation, does it make our experiences any less real? After all, our emotions, relationships, dreams, and fears feel real to us. Whether the substrate of reality is biological matter or lines of code, the experience of living feels genuine. Philosophers have long pointed out that perception is reality for the individual. If you think, feel, and experience, then in a fundamental way, you exist, whether in a base reality or a simulated one. Some even argue that, simulated or not, the meaning we find in life is still authentic and valuable. Of course, simulation theory also raises unsettling questions about free will, control, and the nature of the universe. If we are simulated, who or what created us? Are they watching us? Are there rules they set that we are unaware of? Is there a purpose to the simulation? Or are we simply an experiment, a game, or even a work of art? Could the creators intervene in our world? Might they reboot, change, or end the simulation at will? These questions can spark deep philosophical debates about fate, choice, and the ultimate nature of existence. Skeptics of the simulation theory point out that it remains unproven and possibly unprovable. Without some kind of glitch, error, or sign from the outside, it may be impossible for beings within a simulation to confirm their status. We might simply be left with a fascinating hypothesis that cannot be tested. Others suggest that the universe is strange enough without adding another layer of complexity. They argue that the mysteries of consciousness, physics, and existence are profound but natural, without the need for a simulated explanation. Until there is concrete evidence, simulation theory remains a thought experiment, albeit a powerful one. Still, thinking about simulated reality changes how we see the world. It invites humility about what we think we know. It reminds us that our understanding of reality is limited by our senses and our tools. It encourages us to explore deeper questions about what it means to be conscious, to live, and to find meaning. Whether or not we are living in a simulation, the very act of questioning reality shows how curious, imaginative, and self-aware we are. It points to the special nature of human beings, our endless drive to question the world around us and ourselves within it. The bystander effect is one of the most fascinating and unsettling aspects of human behavior. It describes the phenomenon where the more people there are who witness an emergency or someone in need, the less likely it is that any individual will step forward to help. It seems counterintuitive at first. You might think that the more witnesses there are, the greater the chances that someone will act. But studies and real-life examples have shown that the opposite often happens. Each person assumes someone else will take responsibility, and as a result, no one does. It is a strange and sometimes dangerous feature of group psychology that reveals a lot about how we view our own roles in society and in moments of crisis. The term bystander effect became widely known after the tragic case of Kitty Genovese in 1964. Kitty was attacked outside her apartment in New York City, and reports at the time claimed that dozens of neighbors heard her screams but did not intervene or call the police until it was too late. Although later investigations revealed that the situation was more complicated than initially reported, the case sparked serious interest in understanding why people fail to act when help is most needed. Psychologists John Darley and Bib Latany conducted experiments to study the phenomenon and confirmed that as the number of bystanders increases, the likelihood of any one person helping decreases significantly. One reason the bystander effect happens is the diffusion of responsibility. When we are alone and witness someone in trouble, we feel the full weight of responsibility to act. There is no one else to blame if we do nothing. But when others are present, the responsibility is spread out among the group. Each individual feels less pressure to step up, thinking that someone else will handle it. We rationalize our inaction by convincing ourselves that it's not really our job, or that someone more qualified or better positioned will intervene. The mental load is shared, and unfortunately, this often leads to collective passivity. Another reason is social influence. In ambiguous situations where it's not immediately clear whether there's an emergency, people tend to look to others for cues on how to behave. If no one else is acting concerned or making a move to help, individuals may interpret the situation as less serious than it is. They assume that if others are calm and not intervening, then there is no real danger or urgency. This is known as pluralistic ignorance, where everyone misreads the situation because everyone else seems calm, and that false calmness reinforces everyone's decision to stay inactive. Fear of judgment also plays a role. People may worry about overreacting or making a scene if they step forward, and it turns out that their help wasn't needed. The idea of embarrassment or standing out in a crowd can be powerful enough to suppress the impulse to assist. In many cases, people hesitate, second-guess themselves, and ultimately decide it's safer to do nothing than to risk acting incorrectly. In a strange way, the presence of a crowd creates a psychological pressure to conform to inaction rather than to stand out by taking action. Interestingly, studies have shown that the bystander effect can be reduced or even reversed under certain conditions. When people are assigned clear roles or know that they are individually responsible, they are more likely to help. For example, if a person is singled out, if someone in need looks them directly in the eyes or points at them asking for help, they are much more likely to respond. Personal connection also matters. If the victim is known to the bystanders or is perceived as part of their in-group, people are more likely to intervene. Context and perceived responsibility play crucial roles in whether the bystander effect kicks in or not. Understanding the bystander effect is important because it helps explain not just individual situations, but broader social phenomena as well. It sheds light on why injustices can persist, even when many people are aware of them. It helps us understand why bullying can go unchecked in schools, why corruption can flourish in organizations, or why societal problems like homelessness and discrimination can continue without effective action. Everyone sees the problem. Everyone assumes someone else will fix it. And so the problem remains. Breaking the bystander effect starts with awareness. Simply knowing that this psychological trap exists can make individuals more likely to overcome it. If you realize that everyone else is probably hesitating for the same reasons you are, you can make a conscious decision to be the one who acts. Studies show that people trained in emergency response, or even just taught about the bystander effect, are more likely to intervene when faced with real-life situations. Empowering individuals with the mindset that their actions matter and that waiting for others can have tragic consequences is one of the keys to creating more responsive, compassionate communities. At its core, the bystander effect is a reminder of both the vulnerabilities and the potentials of human nature. Left unchecked, it leads to silence, inaction, and sometimes tragedy. But with awareness and courage, individuals can step forward, breaking the paralysis of the crowd. In doing so, they can inspire others to act as well, turning a group that would have once stood frozen into one that moves together toward help and hope. The next time we find ourselves witnessing a situation where help might be needed, we should remember that being just one person doesn't make our action insignificant. It makes it essential. Faces in dreams are one of the strangest and most fascinating parts of our sleeping lives. There's a theory that every face you see in a dream is someone you have actually encountered before, even if you don't consciously remember them. The brain, incredible as it is, doesn't seem to invent completely new faces while we dream. Instead, it pulls from a vast archive of faces we've seen throughout our lives. faces of people we have passed on the street, seen in a crowd, glanced at once in a store, watched on television, or noticed briefly at some random moment and immediately forgotten. Even if those encounters were only seconds long, the brain stores that information somewhere deep, and it can resurface while we dream, creating the characters who populate the strange worlds of our unconscious mind. Dreaming is a complex process that scientists are still trying to fully understand. During sleep, especially during REM sleep, our brains are active in unique ways. They sift through memories, emotions, and fragments of sensory information, weaving them together into often surreal narratives. When it comes to people in dreams, the mind seems to work with what it already knows. It's much easier and more efficient for the brain to borrow a face from memory than it is to invent a new one out of nothing. This is why the strangers we encounter in dreams still have detailed, realistic features, even if we think we have never seen them before. Somewhere, somehow, we did see them, even if just for a fleeting moment. The idea that our brains are constantly recording faces without us being fully aware of it is incredible. Throughout a typical day, we see hundreds, maybe thousands of faces without realizing it. Most of them don't stick in our conscious mind. We are usually focused on other things, getting to work, running errands, meeting friends, and we don't pause to commit every face to memory. But our brains are remarkable at absorbing information in the background. Faces are particularly important because humans are wired to pay attention to them. From the moment we are born, we are tuned to recognize and interpret faces. This deep, primal recognition makes it possible for the brain to store huge numbers of faces without us even realizing it. When we dream, the logical, organized part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, becomes less active. This loosening of rational control allows for a freer flow of images and ideas. In that free-flowing state, faces from our hidden memory banks can emerge and be assigned roles in our dream stories. Sometimes, the faces belong to people we know well, family, friends, old classmates. Other times, they belong to total strangers whose features we cannot consciously place. Yet the brain uses them all the same, casting them into dream roles as villains, allies, background characters, or fleeting passers-by. It's fascinating to think that the random man you dream about arguing with in a subway station might be someone you glimpsed 2 years ago walking out of a restaurant, or that the helpful stranger in your dream might have been a blurry figure in the background of a TV show you watched months ago. Dreams have a way of blending familiar and unfamiliar elements, stitching together memories and impressions into narratives that feel real at the time, even if they make no logical sense when we wake up. The emotional context of dream faces is also intriguing. Often, the emotions we feel about dream characters seem strong and clear, even if we can't explain them. We might feel an instant trust or an intense fear toward a face without understanding why. Some researchers believe that this happens because the emotional memories associated with those faces, or the circumstances under which we first saw them, can influence how they are used in dreams. If you saw a face during a stressful situation, even if you barely noticed it, your brain might later attach a feeling of anxiety to that face when it appears in a dream. If you saw a smiling, kind face when you were feeling happy and safe, that face might reappear in a dream with those same positive emotions attached. The mystery of dream faces reminds us how much of our experiences are stored below the surface of our conscious awareness. Our minds are far more observant and detail-oriented than we usually give them credit for. Even in everyday life, we are constantly recording, storing, and later accessing information we don't even realize we have. Dreams show us just how deep and rich that hidden layer of memory can be. The people we meet, the crowds we pass through, the faces we glance at without thinking, all of it becomes part of the raw material for the stories our brains tell at night. Thinking about dream faces can also make everyday life feel a little more magical. It suggests that every encounter, no matter how small, leaves some kind of trace. The stranger you barely noticed today could become the hero or villain of your dream a year from now. Your brain is constantly gathering material, turning the background noise of life into the foundation for incredible, strange, and often beautiful dream worlds. In a way, dreams are a tribute to all the unnoticed moments and people that brush against our lives, reminding us that even the smallest glimpses can become part of the fabric of who we are. Galaxies beyond reach is not just a poetic idea, it is a scientific reality. Most of the universe is moving away from us, and not just moving away slowly, but at speeds so great that they will eventually be forever beyond our ability to reach, to see, or even to detect. The universe has been expanding since the Big Bang, and that expansion is not slowing down. In fact, it is accelerating, driven by a mysterious force we call dark energy. As a result, galaxies that are already distant are being carried farther and farther away from us, faster and faster, until they cross a kind of cosmic horizon. Once they pass that point, no matter how powerful our technology becomes, or how long we wait, they will be lost to us forever, slipping out of view into the unreachable dark. This realization can be both humbling and haunting. For most of human history, we believed that the stars we could see were the extent of the universe. Then we discovered that our Milky Way is just one galaxy among billions. And now we understand that even those billions are temporary companions. The universe's expansion means that over unimaginable timescales, the sky itself will grow emptier. Distant galaxies will vanish from our view as their light stretches out beyond detection, leaving behind only the handful of galaxies that are gravitationally bound to our own. In the far future, observers in the Milky Way may have no evidence that a larger universe ever existed at all. The key to understanding why this happens lies in the concept of space itself expanding. It's not that galaxies are speeding away through space like rockets. It's that space itself is stretching, carrying galaxies along with it. Imagine raisins in a rising loaf of bread. The dough expands, and the raisins move farther apart, not because they are moving on their own, but because the space between them is growing. The greater the distance between 2 points, the faster they are pushed apart. In our universe, the farther a galaxy is from us, the faster it recedes, thanks to the ongoing expansion of space driven by dark energy. There is a specific limit to how far we can ever see or reach, known as the cosmic event horizon. It marks the boundary beyond which objects are receding faster than the speed of light relative to us because of the expansion of space. Even if we sent a spaceship traveling at near the speed of light, it could never catch up to anything beyond that horizon. The expansion of space would carry those galaxies away faster than any ship could ever travel. This is not a limit set by the engines or technology. It is a limit imposed by the very nature of space-time itself. Right now, we can observe a great many galaxies because the light they emitted millions or billions of years ago is still reaching us. We see them not as they are today, but as they were long ago, when the universe was younger and closer. As time goes on, fewer and fewer new galaxies will come into view. Instead, more will slip out of sight, their ancient light stretching into longer and longer wavelengths until it disappears from detection altogether. Future astronomers, billions of years from now, may look up and see only a few neighboring galaxies left, trapped together by gravity while the rest of the universe has disappeared beyond their observational reach. This paints a lonely picture for the distant future, but it also highlights how precious our current moment is. We are living at a time when we can still see a rich and full universe, when the light of countless galaxies still fills our telescopes and reveals the vastness of creation. We have the opportunity now to learn about the universe's history, its structure, and its destiny. Future civilizations, if they exist, may not have access to the same cosmic information. For them, the evidence of the Big Bang and the expansion of the universe might be lost, and they might conclude that their isolated group of galaxies is all that ever was. It's also worth reflecting on how much we have already learned with just a tiny window of opportunity. Using the faint glow of distant galaxies, the cosmic microwave background radiation, and the subtle patterns of light stretching across space, we have pieced together a remarkable story of how the universe came to be. We know that it began in a hot, dense state and has been expanding and cooling ever since. We know that dark energy is pushing the expansion to accelerate, and we know that most of what exists will one day move beyond our grasp. Galaxies beyond reach remind us of the incredible scale and complexity of the cosmos, and of our small but significant place within it. Even though much of the universe will eventually become invisible and unreachable, our ability to understand it now is a triumph of human curiosity and ingenuity. We are creatures who evolved on a small rocky planet, orbiting an average star in an unremarkable galaxy, yet we have been able to glimpse the grand structure of the universe itself. In a way, knowing that the universe is slipping away gives even greater meaning to our exploration. It gives urgency to our quest for knowledge, making it clear that the cosmos is not a static, permanent backdrop, but a dynamic and evolving reality. Our window to see and understand the full splendor of the universe is open now, but it will not stay open forever. The galaxies we can observe today are like ancient messages traveling across time and space to reach us, and it is our privilege to listen, to study, and to remember. Brain power drain is something most of us experience without even realizing it. Every single moment, even when we are sitting quietly or doing nothing that feels mentally demanding, our brains are working hard behind the scenes, consuming an enormous amount of energy. In fact, despite weighing only about 2% of our total body mass, the brain uses around 20% of the body's total energy output. That is a staggering amount when you think about it. No other organ demands such a high share of our energy just to function. Whether we are solving complex math problems, daydreaming about the future, recalling memories, or simply keeping our hearts beating and our lungs breathing automatically, the brain is constantly firing, constantly processing, and constantly burning through energy resources. What's interesting is that much of this energy isn't spent on deep thinking or conscious effort. Even at rest, when we are not actively concentrating on a task, the brain is still consuming a huge amount of energy. This is because it is always managing 1,000 background operations that keep us alive and aware. Neurons, the cells responsible for sending and receiving electrical signals, are in a constant state of activity. Communication between neurons, processing sensory information, maintaining balance, regulating body temperature, and handling emotions all require a continuous flow of energy. It's like a city that never sleeps, with millions of tiny workers moving goods, relaying messages, repairing infrastructure, and ensuring the lights stay on no matter what time it is. The energy the brain uses comes mainly from glucose, a type of sugar that is broken down from the foods we eat. Oxygen is also crucial. The brain uses about 20% of the body's oxygen supply at any given moment, carried there by the bloodstream. This combination of glucose and oxygen fuels the complex biochemical processes that allow neurons to fire and networks to synchronize. When either of these supplies is interrupted, even briefly, the effects can be immediate and severe. A few minutes without oxygen can cause brain cells to die. This high demand for resources is part of why brain injuries and strokes can be so devastating. We often feel the brain's energy demands most acutely when we are engaged in intense mental work. After long periods of studying, problem-solving, or decision-making, people often report feeling physically tired, even if they haven't moved much at all. That's because thinking hard burns energy. Decision fatigue is a real phenomenon where making too many choices drains the brain's resources, making it harder to think clearly or resist impulses. After a mentally exhausting day, the brain craves rest and glucose to recharge, just like muscles do after physical exercise. Interestingly, not all tasks demand the same amount of energy. Repetitive, familiar tasks tend to be more energy efficient because the brain has developed shortcuts and habits. But learning something new, managing uncertainty, or adapting to change forces the brain to work harder. That's why new learning experiences or high-stakes situations can feel so draining. The brain must create new neural pathways, evaluate risks, and handle unfamiliar information, all of which require more energy than simply running through well-worn patterns. Sleep plays a critical role in managing the brain's energy balance. During deep sleep, the brain carries out maintenance tasks that clear away waste products and restore energy supplies. It is also when the brain consolidates memories and strengthens neural connections formed during the day. Without enough sleep, the brain struggles to function efficiently. Concentration, mood regulation, and decision-making all deteriorate when the brain's energy system is compromised by sleep deprivation. Chronic lack of sleep can even contribute to long-term cognitive decline. Brain power drain also offers insight into why nutrition and exercise are so vital for mental health. A healthy diet ensures a steady supply of glucose and essential nutrients needed for brain function. Exercise, especially aerobic exercise, boosts blood flow to the brain, improving the delivery of oxygen and nutrients. Regular movement also triggers the release of chemicals, like endorphins and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which support brain health and resilience. Feeding and moving the body well directly impacts the brain's ability to stay energized, alert, and capable. Emotional stress can further increase the brain's energy demands. When we are anxious, fearful, or upset, the brain ramps up activity in regions involved in threat detection, emotional regulation, and problem-solving. Chronic stress keeps these systems on high alert, constantly burning through energy and eventually leading to mental exhaustion. Learning how to manage stress through mindfulness, relaxation techniques, and social support can help conserve the brain's energy and improve overall mental performance. Another fascinating aspect of brain energy use is the efficiency built into its structure. Although the brain consumes a massive amount of energy, it uses that energy incredibly effectively. A single neuron can process and transmit information using surprisingly little energy compared to a computer chip. Even with all the advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning, human brains remain far more energy efficient than any man-made system. This incredible efficiency allows the brain to manage complex tasks like language, abstract thought, creativity, and empathy without consuming an unsustainable amount of fuel. Understanding how much energy the brain uses gives us a deeper appreciation for how miraculous and delicate our mental processes are. It reminds us that thinking, feeling, imagining, and simply being are all energy-intensive activities that deserve respect and care. Taking care of our bodies, managing our stress, getting enough sleep, and feeding our curiosity are all ways to support the amazing engine inside our heads. The brain is always working, always consuming, always creating the experience of being alive moment by moment. The more we understand the incredible demands it faces, the better we can nurture it, protect it, and unleash its full potential. The dark matter mystery is one of the most intriguing puzzles in all of science. Most of the universe is unseen and unknown, and dark matter is at the heart of that mystery. Even though we can't see it, touch it, or directly detect it, scientists believe that dark matter makes up about 85% of all the matter in the universe. That means everything we can see, all the stars, planets, galaxies, and gas clouds, accounts for only a tiny fraction of what actually exists. The rest is something invisible and strange, something that does not emit light or energy, but still exerts a powerful gravitational pull on everything around it. In many ways, understanding dark matter is like trying to solve a puzzle when most of the pieces are missing, yet the outline of the picture is still visible. The first hints that dark matter existed came from observations of galaxies. In the 1930s, astronomer Fritz Zwicky noticed that galaxies in distant clusters were moving much faster than expected based on the visible matter they contained. According to the laws of physics, there wasn't enough observable mass to create the gravitational pull needed to hold those fast-moving galaxies together. They should have been flying apart into space, but they weren't. Zwicky concluded that there must be some kind of unseen mass providing the necessary gravitational glue. He called it dark matter, and although his ideas were not fully accepted at the time, they laid the groundwork for one of the biggest scientific quests of the modern era. Later, in the 1970s, astronomer Vera Rubin provided even more compelling evidence for dark matter. She studied how stars moved within galaxies and found that stars far from the galactic center were orbiting just as fast as stars near the center. Again, according to Newtonian physics, the outer stars should have been moving much more slowly unless there was an enormous amount of invisible mass spread throughout the galaxy. Rubin's work was groundbreaking, and today her observations are considered some of the strongest evidence that dark matter exists. Despite all this evidence, dark matter remains a ghost. Scientists have inferred its presence through its gravitational effects, but they have not yet been able to detect it directly. It does not emit or absorb light, which means it cannot be seen with telescopes. It does not seem to interact with normal matter through the electromagnetic force, the way regular particles like protons and electrons do. That leaves gravity as its main mode of interaction, and gravity, while powerful on a large scale, is incredibly weak on the scale of particles, making dark matter frustratingly elusive. Over the years, many experiments have been designed to try to catch a glimpse of dark matter particles. Giant detectors buried deep underground, shielded from cosmic rays and background noise, sit quietly waiting for a rare collision between a dark matter particle and an ordinary atom. Particle accelerators like the Large Hadron Collider have smashed particles together at near-light speeds, hoping to create or detect dark matter. So far, these searches have not found definitive proof, but they have ruled out many possibilities and helped refine the theories. There are several leading ideas about what dark matter might be. One popular theory suggests that it consists of particles called WIMPs, which stands for Weakly Interacting Massive Particles. WIMPs would be heavy, stable particles that barely interact with normal matter except through gravity. Another idea is that dark matter could be made of axions, which are extremely light, slow-moving particles. Some scientists have even proposed more exotic possibilities, such as entire dark matter galaxies, or dark sectors made up of a whole family of dark particles with their own interactions. The truth is, we don't know yet, and that mystery drives an enormous amount of research across physics and astronomy. Dark matter is not just important for understanding what the universe is made of. It is also crucial for understanding how the universe evolved. Without the extra gravitational pull provided by dark matter, galaxies might never have formed. In the early universe, shortly after the Big Bang, tiny fluctuations in the distribution of matter were amplified by dark matter's gravity, allowing gas to clump together and form stars and galaxies. Without dark matter, the universe today would look very different, probably much emptier and less structured. The existence of dark matter also challenges the idea that we fully understand the laws of physics. If we can't find the particles responsible, maybe our theories of gravity need to be revised. Some researchers have proposed alternative ideas, like modified Newtonian dynamics, or MOND, which suggests that the behavior of gravity itself changes at very large scales. However, most evidence so far still points to the existence of an unseen form of matter as the simplest and most consistent explanation. Living in a universe filled mostly with something invisible and mysterious can feel unsettling, but it is also deeply inspiring. It reminds us how much there still is to learn. It shows that even with all the progress humanity has made, we are still just scratching the surface of understanding the cosmos. Dark matter could turn out to be the key that unlocks new physics, revealing layers of reality we have not even imagined yet. It could redefine our place in the universe, showing us that what we experience with our senses is only a small fraction of what truly exists. The dark matter mystery teaches us humility. It reminds us that the universe is bigger, stranger, and more complex than our current models can fully explain. It challenges scientists to think creatively, to build new tools, and to ask deeper questions. And it invites everyone to wonder about the unseen forces that shape our world, our galaxy, and the entire cosmos. In a way, even though dark matter is invisible, its presence lights up one of the greatest adventures of discovery humanity has ever undertaken. Invisible blind spots are one of the most fascinating tricks our brains play on us. Right now, you are blind to part of your surroundings, and you probably have no idea. Every person has a natural blind spot in each eye where the optic nerve connects to the retina, a spot where there are no light-detecting cells, meaning no image can be formed there. But even though these blind spots exist, you don't notice them. You move through your day, reading, walking, driving, and interacting with the world as if your vision were complete and flawless. The reason you do not see holes in your field of vision is because your brain is filling in the missing information automatically. It guesses what should be there based on the surrounding visual data and your past experiences, patching over the gaps so seamlessly that you never become aware of the deception. This phenomenon shows just how much of what we experience as reality is actually constructed by the brain. Our brains are not passive receivers of information. They are active interpreters, constantly making assumptions, predictions, and adjustments to create a coherent, smooth experience of the world. When it comes to vision, the brain takes the raw, incomplete input from the eyes and processes it into what feels like a complete and accurate picture. The blind spots are just one of many examples of how our perception is not a direct recording of reality, but a best guess interpretation that happens so fast and so smoothly, we believe it is real. You can actually test your blind spot very easily. There are simple exercises where you close one eye, focus on a particular mark, and move another mark into your peripheral vision. At a certain point, the second mark will vanish completely, not because it faded away, but because it entered the blind spot. Even though you're staring at a blank part of your visual field, your brain refuses to show you a black hole or a warning sign. Instead, it fills in the area with the colors, textures, or patterns from the surrounding space. If you're looking at a white wall, your brain paints it white. If you're looking at a patterned surface, it extends the pattern. Your brain is so good at covering for this missing information that you live your entire life rarely thinking about it. But the blind spot is just a small, literal example of a much larger truth about how we perceive the world. Our senses are limited and imperfect. The information they collect is often incomplete, noisy, or ambiguous. To survive and function, our brains have evolved to fill in the blanks, smooth over inconsistencies, and create a coherent version of reality. We think we are seeing everything clearly and objectively, but in fact, we are experiencing a constructed reality, one designed to be useful rather than perfectly accurate. This has important implications for how we understand not just vision, but thought and memory as well. Just like the brain fills in visual gaps without asking our permission, it also fills in gaps in our memories and in our understanding of events. We are often confident in our recollections and our perceptions, but studies show that memory is just as much a reconstruction as it is a recording. We remember the general shape of events and fill in missing details based on assumptions, expectations, and even suggestions from others. Our confidence in what we believe we saw or experienced does not guarantee its accuracy. In daily life, this constant filling in process is usually beneficial. It allows us to move quickly through the world without being paralyzed by uncertainty. It helps us make sense of incomplete or confusing situations. It allows us to trust our senses enough to act decisively, but it also means that we are vulnerable to errors. We might misinterpret a situation because our brain filled in the wrong details. We might hold inaccurate memories without realizing they have been altered over time. We might fail to notice important information because our brains have already decided what should be there. Understanding invisible blind spots encourages a sense of humility about our perceptions. It reminds us that what we see, remember, and believe is filtered through layers of mental processing that we are not consciously aware of. It suggests that being open to other perspectives, questioning our assumptions, and being willing to re-examine our experiences is not just wise, but necessary. It also highlights the incredible power of the brain, not just as a receiver of information, but as an active creator of our experience of reality. In some ways, the brain's ability to fill in missing information is a superpower. It allows us to function in a complex and often chaotic world without needing perfect sensory input. It helps us navigate uncertainty with grace and speed. But like any superpower, it comes with its risks. Recognizing that we live with blind spots, both literal and metaphorical, makes us better thinkers, better listeners, and more careful observers. The invisible blind spots in our eyes are a small reminder that the world we experience is not a perfect mirror of what is out there, but a dynamic, living creation shaped by our own minds. They invite us to stay curious, to keep asking questions, and to remember that sometimes what we do not see is just as important as what we do. Every moment of perception is a remarkable act of creation, a testament to the brain's endless effort to build a world that we can move through, trust, and believe in, even if it is stitched together by unseen hands. Sensory overload is something all of us experience, whether we realize it or not. At every moment, our senses are flooded with information. Our eyes are taking in thousands of colors, shapes, and movements. Our ears are picking up layers of sounds from conversations, footsteps, cars passing by, and distant birds. Our skin feels textures, temperatures, and pressures. Our noses detect subtle smells, and our tongues are sensitive to tastes even when we are not eating. The amount of sensory information entering our bodies at any given moment is staggering, yet we consciously process only a tiny part of it. Our brains have to filter, prioritize, and discard vast amounts of data constantly, just so that we can function without being overwhelmed. The human nervous system is incredibly powerful, but it has limits. Imagine if you were aware of every sound, every flicker of light, every sensation on your skin, all at once. It would be paralyzing. Instead, the brain acts like a gatekeeper, selecting only the most relevant or interesting pieces of information to pass into conscious awareness. Everything else gets processed in the background or filtered out entirely. This filtering happens so seamlessly that we are rarely aware of it. We simply experience what feels like a complete, manageable picture of reality, even though it is actually a carefully curated highlight reel created by our own minds. One striking example of this is something called selective attention. It is the ability to focus on one particular thing while ignoring others. A classic experiment demonstrating this is the invisible gorilla study. Participants watching a video are asked to count how many times a basketball is passed between players. So focused on the task, many viewers completely miss the fact that someone in a gorilla suit walks right through the scene. This shows how easily we can overlook even huge, obvious things when our attention is tightly focused. Our brains simply tune out everything that isn't immediately related to what we believe is important. But even with these amazing filtering abilities, sometimes the flood of sensory input becomes too much. That is when sensory overload happens. It can feel like being trapped in a storm of stimuli with no way to escape. Bright lights feel harsh, loud sounds clash together painfully, crowds become suffocating, and every little sensation feels magnified. Sensory overload can be overwhelming, stressful, and exhausting. For some people, particularly those with sensory processing disorders, autism, or anxiety conditions, even ordinary environments like a shopping mall or a busy street can trigger overload. The brain's need to filter sensory input is not just about comfort, it is about survival. In an evolutionary sense, being able to quickly notice what matters, like a predator moving in the grass or the smell of smoke, was crucial. Ignoring irrelevant background noise helped early humans focus on immediate threats or opportunities. Even today, our brains are wired to prioritize certain types of sensory information over others, depending on the situation. Danger, novelty, and emotionally charged stimuli are more likely to grab our attention. Meanwhile, familiar, repetitive, or low-risk information fades into the background. Multitasking often pushes us closer to sensory overload without us realizing it. Trying to answer emails while listening to a podcast, while keeping an eye on social media, creates a competition for our limited attention resources. Our brains scramble to keep up, switching rapidly between inputs. This constant switching is inefficient and exhausting. It can lead to mistakes, reduced memory retention, and a greater sense of mental fatigue. Despite the modern culture of doing many things at once, the brain works best when it can focus deeply on one thing at a time. Technology has amplified the potential for sensory overload. Our devices constantly deliver a barrage of notifications, news updates, advertisements, and entertainment. Bright screens, vibrating alerts, pop-up messages, they all clamor for our attention. We are bombarded with more information in a single day than someone living a few centuries ago might have encountered in a year. While technology has amazing benefits, it also challenges our brains in ways we are only beginning to fully understand. The need for downtime, quiet, and mental space has never been greater. Nature offers a powerful antidote to sensory overload. Studies show that spending time in natural environments helps reduce stress and restore mental energy. The sounds of birds, the sight of trees swaying, the feel of a gentle breeze engage our senses in a soothing, non-overwhelming way. Nature provides what researchers call soft fascination, gently capturing our attention without demanding too much from us. This allows the brain to rest and recover from the constant high alert that modern life often demands. Mindfulness practices also help, paying attention deliberately to one sense at a time, like the feel of your breath, the taste of a meal, or the sound of rain, can retrain the brain to focus and slow down. Mindfulness reduces the flood of competing inputs and strengthens the brain's ability to manage attention. It reminds us that we do not have to react to every piece of sensory information we encounter. We can choose where to place our attention, and by doing so, create a little more peace and clarity in our lives. Recognizing that we consciously process only a tiny slice of reality is humbling. It reminds us that what we perceive is just a fragment of what is actually there. It encourages us to be patient with ourselves and with others when attention lapses or when focus wavers. Our brains are doing an incredible job managing a storm of information with remarkable grace, even if sometimes they need a break. By understanding sensory overload and respecting the limits of our attention, we can live more calmly, more fully, and more wisely in a world that never stops moving. The Tetris Effect is a fascinating phenomenon where repetitive actions and experiences start to invade your thoughts, your memories, and even your dreams. It is named after the popular video game Tetris, where players rotate and fit falling blocks together. People who played Tetris for long periods found that even after they stopped playing, they would continue to see the shapes falling in their minds. Some would dream about the game, visualizing the blocks in their sleep, or even seeing them against the backdrop of real life with their eyes open. This strange blending of game and reality shows how deeply repetitive tasks can carve patterns into the brain, sometimes without us even noticing until they surface in unexpected ways. But the Tetris Effect is not just about video games. It can happen with almost any repeated activity. If you spend all day assembling puzzles, organizing boxes, driving routes, or even scrolling through social media, those patterns can linger in your mind long after you stop. You might find yourself mentally arranging books on a shelf after a day of organizing. You might dream about playing chess after a long tournament. The brain continues processing the repetitive activity, even when you are not consciously engaged with it. What is happening is that the brain is adapting. When we do something over and over, especially when it requires spatial awareness, problem solving, or motor coordination, the brain begins to strengthen the neural pathways associated with that activity. Practice doesn't just make perfect. Practice actually rewires the brain, making certain patterns of thought and action more automatic. Dreams, in particular, are fertile ground for the Tetris effect. During sleep, especially in the REM stages, the brain processes and consolidates memories. It replays significant experiences, sorts through emotions, and strengthens learning. If a repetitive activity dominates your waking hours, it is likely to show up in your dreams because the brain sees it as important data to review and encode. Sometimes these dreams can be pleasant or neutral, simply reflecting the repetitive task. Other times, they can be unsettling, trapping the dreamer in endless loops of the same activity. For example, people learning to ski or surf might dream of falling over and over again, while students studying for exams might dream of flipping endlessly through textbooks. The Tetris effect also reveals something fundamental about how the brain prioritizes information. The more time and attention we give to something, the more likely it is to shape our mental landscape. This is true not just for activities, but for emotions, thoughts, and habits. If you spend much of your day worrying, for instance, those patterns of anxiety can spill over into your dreams and subconscious thoughts. If you focus on gratitude and positive experiences, those patterns can also begin to weave themselves into your mental fabric. In this way, the Tetris effect is not just a quirky side effect of repetitive action, but a window into the brain's ability to learn and adapt based on focus and repetition. There is even evidence that the Tetris effect can be beneficial. Studies have shown that when people dream about the activities they are learning, they often perform better at those activities later. In one experiment, participants who played Tetris and reported dreaming about it improved more quickly than those who did not dream about the game. The dreams, it seems, were part of the brain's learning process, helping to refine skills and strategies without conscious effort. This has exciting implications for everything from athletic training to academic learning. It suggests that intense focus and repeated practice, followed by sleep, can supercharge our ability to learn and adapt. However, there is also a downside. In cases where the repetitive activity is stressful or negative, the Tetris effect can reinforce unwanted patterns. For example, people who experience trauma may find the traumatic event replaying itself in their dreams and waking thoughts, similar to how a repetitive game or task invades the mind. This can contribute to conditions like PTSD, where intrusive memories and dreams become difficult to escape. In these cases, the brain's habit of replaying intense experiences works against well-being rather than enhancing it. Understanding this can help in developing therapies that aim to redirect or interrupt these negative loops, helping the brain to form healthier patterns over time. The Tetris effect is a powerful reminder that our minds are shaped by what we do repeatedly. Our daily habits, thoughts, and experiences are not just fleeting moments. They are the raw material from which the brain builds our perception of reality. Repetition strengthens certain neural circuits, making it easier and more automatic to think, act, and even dream along certain lines. This gives us a certain responsibility over what we feed our minds. If we want to change how we think, feel, or perform, we need to pay attention to the patterns we are reinforcing every day. It also explains why breaks, variety, and rest are important. Constant repetition without relief can lock the mind into narrow patterns that are hard to break. Taking time to step away, to experience new things, and to give the brain different kinds of stimulation helps maintain mental flexibility. Sleep, in particular, becomes even more vital when we realize how deeply it influences the way our brains organize and reinforce our experiences. The Tetris Effect shows that our brains are not passive observers of the world. They are active builders, constantly shaping and reshaping reality based on what we do, what we focus on, and what we repeat. Every action leaves an imprint. Every repeated behavior becomes a building block for who we are. Even in our dreams, when we think we have disconnected from the world, the patterns we live by continue to play out, showing us just how deeply repetition and attention carve the architecture of the mind. A new you every decade is not just a poetic idea. It is rooted in real biology. Every 7 to 10 years, almost every cell in your body is replaced. Some cells renew themselves quickly, within days or weeks, while others take much longer. But over the course of a decade, the majority of the physical materials that make up your body have been refreshed. Your body is not a static structure. It is a living, breathing, constantly changing organism. It is easy to think of ourselves as solid and unchanging, but the truth is that we are in a near constant state of rebuilding from the inside out. Different parts of the body operate on different timelines. The cells lining your stomach, for example, have a brutal environment to deal with. Acid strong enough to break down food, and they replace themselves every few days. Skin cells, constantly exposed to the environment, slough off and renew roughly every 2 to 4 weeks. Your red blood cells, essential for carrying oxygen throughout your body, live for about 4 months before being replaced. Even your bones, which seem so solid and permanent, are dynamic tissues. Bone cells break down and rebuild over time, so much so that your skeleton is effectively remodeled roughly every 10 years. Some parts of the body hold on to their cells for much longer. Heart muscle cells and certain neurons in the brain are more stable, with some lasting for decades or even a lifetime. But even these more durable cells are surrounded and supported by systems that are continuously renewing themselves. Supporting tissues, blood vessels, and the extracellular matrix that holds cells together are refreshed as part of the body's ongoing maintenance. This balance between durability and renewal allows the body to maintain its structure while also adapting and repairing itself. The idea that we are physically new every decade invites a deeper reflection on the nature of identity. If the material making up your body is always changing, what is it that makes you you? We often think of ourselves as having a permanent self, something that persists unchanged through time. But biology suggests otherwise. Our memories, habits, values, and personalities may feel stable, but even these are influenced by the constant renewal of the physical structures in the brain. Identity, like the body, may be more fluid than we imagine, shaped moment by countless small changes. This continuous process of renewal is not perfect, of course. As we age, the body's ability to repair and regenerate declines. Errors accumulate. Cells become less efficient at dividing. Damage from environmental factors like UV radiation, pollution, and poor diet can take a toll. This gradual wearing down is part of why we experience aging. The body still renews itself, but the renewal process becomes less flawless over time. Still, The fact that we have such a robust system of regeneration is remarkable. Every day, millions of cells in your body die and are replaced without you ever noticing. Your body works silently and tirelessly to keep you alive, rebuilding you even as you go about your daily life. Understanding that you are physically new every decade can also be empowering. It suggests that change is built into our very biology. We are designed for growth, for renewal, for transformation. Just as our cells are constantly turning over, we too can reinvent ourselves, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We are not trapped by the people we used to be. New habits, new ways of thinking, new ways of being are possible because change is already happening at the most fundamental levels of who we are. Health and lifestyle choices have a powerful influence on the quality of our cellular renewal. Good nutrition provides the raw materials for building healthy new cells. Exercise stimulates regeneration, especially in muscle and bone. Sleep supports the body's repair processes, and stress management helps prevent damage that could interfere with renewal. The choices we make today lay the foundation for the version of ourselves we will become tomorrow. Every meal, every workout, every night's rest is an investment in the future you, a version of yourself built molecule by molecule over time. The fact that your body refreshes itself every 7 to 10 years also deepens the sense of connection to the larger cycles of nature. Just as the seasons turn, as trees shed leaves and grow new ones, as rivers carve and reshape landscapes, we too are part of the endless flow of change and renewal. Life is not static anywhere. Growth, decay, and rebirth are universal patterns, and we are no exception. Our bodies mirror the rhythms of the universe, constantly moving, constantly transforming. It is easy to feel weighed down by mistakes of the past, by old identities that no longer fit, or by regrets that seem carved into stone. But biology tells us a different story. It tells us that nothing about us is truly permanent. It tells us that renewal is happening all the time, whether we notice it or not. This perspective invites hope. It suggests that we can let go of what no longer serves us, that we can grow into new versions of ourselves, and that the future is not limited by the past. A new you every decade is more than just a biological fact. It is a metaphor for the human spirit. Just as our bodies quietly rebuild themselves, cell by cell, we too can rebuild our lives, choice by choice, dream by dream. We are not fixed. We are always becoming. And that is one of the most powerful truths of being alive. Another you exists is not just a poetic idea, but something that real scientific theories actually suggest could be possible. In an infinite universe, or a multiverse filled with endless versions of reality, the idea that somewhere out there, another version of you is living a slightly different life becomes not just possible, but almost inevitable. If space goes on forever, if there are infinite galaxies, infinite stars, infinite planets, then the combinations of matter and energy, even if they seem wildly varied, would eventually start repeating. Somewhere in that endless expanse, the same arrangements of atoms could come together again, forming another Earth, another city like yours, another person like you. Maybe that version of you made different choices. Maybe that version of you chose a different career, married someone else, took a chance you hesitated to take. Or maybe the difference is so tiny that the other you is identical to you in almost every way, except for a single thought or action that branched off into a new path. The idea comes from the intersection of physics, cosmology, and probability. In a finite space, there is only so much that can happen, but in infinite space, everything that can happen eventually does. over and over. Our universe appears incredibly vast already, but some models suggest that what we can see, the observable universe, is just a tiny bubble in a much larger cosmic ocean. Beyond the limits of what we can detect, space could go on without end, a sprawling, boundless expanse where every possible history plays itself out. It is a hard concept to wrap our minds around because we live in a world where resources, choices, and opportunities always seem limited. But infinity changes the rules. In infinite space, even the rarest possibilities must occur. There is also the concept of the multiverse, which suggests not just one infinite universe, but countless separate universes, each with its own set of physical laws, constants, and histories. In some of these universes, life might not be possible at all. In others, life might thrive in ways completely alien to us, and in some, life might evolve very similarly to the way it did here, creating versions of Earth, versions of history, versions of you. If the multiverse is real, then there could be an unimaginable number of yous out there, some almost exactly the same, some wildly different living lives that you can only dream about or barely imagine. Thinking about another you existing raises fascinating questions about identity and destiny. If another you made different choices, are they still you? Are you defined by the choices you make, the circumstances you live through, the people you meet? Or is there something deeper that stays constant across all versions of you? It challenges the idea that we are solitary, unique beings. It suggests that identity might be more fluid, and that our lives are just one thread in an endless tapestry of possibilities. It also invites reflection on the nature of choice and chance. Small decisions can have huge consequences over time. A different route taken home, a different word said during a conversation, a single moment of courage or hesitation, all these could ripple outward, shaping an entirely different life. Somewhere, perhaps, another you made the choice you sometimes wonder about. Somewhere, another you chased a different dream, made a different friend, started a different journey. It makes every moment feel both more precious and more mysterious, knowing that the paths not taken might still exist in some form out there in the vastness. At the same time, the idea that another you exists can be strangely comforting. It suggests that you are not alone in the universe in a deeper way than we usually think. Not only is there life beyond Earth, perhaps, but there are reflections of ourselves scattered across the stars, each living out variations of the lives we live, each facing their own joys and struggles. It can remind us that existence itself is rich, layered, and far beyond what we can see or understand. Some people worry that the idea of infinite copies cheapens individuality, but another way to look at it is to see individuality as even more beautiful. In the face of infinite possibilities, the specific life you are living right now is still unique, shaped by your particular consciousness, your experiences, your heart. Even if another you exists somewhere, they are not you in this moment, thinking these thoughts, feeling these feelings. Your awareness, your memories, your presence are singular, no matter how vast the universe may be. Science has not yet proven the existence of other versions of ourselves. These ideas remain theoretical, fascinating possibilities rather than confirmed facts. But contemplating them stretches our imaginations and deepens our sense of wonder. It reminds us how little we truly know about the full nature of reality. It invites us to dream bigger, to think more openly about what existence might really mean. Another you exists. Maybe they are out there among the stars, walking a similar path or a very different one. Maybe they wonder about you the way you wonder about them. Maybe the choices you are making today ripple outward into countless realities, weaving together a multiverse of stories. And maybe the most important thing to remember is that, whether in this universe or another, every version of you matters. Every thought, every action, every moment is part of something far greater than we can see, a testament to the infinite possibilities of life itself. The sunk cost trap is one of the most powerful and sneaky ways our minds can lead us into bad decisions. It happens when we stick to a poor choice simply because we have already invested time, money, energy, or emotions into it. Even when it becomes clear that continuing is a mistake, we often push forward, trying to justify what we have already spent rather than admitting it is time to walk away. The sunk cost trap can happen in relationships, careers, projects, hobbies, and even simple everyday decisions. It can lead us to waste even more time, more money, and more energy, all because we find it so hard to let go of what we have already committed. The basic logic behind the sunk cost trap is that our past investments feel like they should matter to our current decisions, but in reality, they should not. Rational decision-making says that we should make choices based on the future, not the past. If something no longer makes sense to pursue, the fact that we have already spent resources on it should not matter. Those costs are sunk. They are gone and cannot be recovered. What matters is whether continuing is the best choice going forward. Yet emotionally, it feels wrong to abandon our investments. It feels like quitting. It feels like losing. And most of us hate the feeling of loss more than we enjoy the feeling of gain. This emotional bias is deeply wired into our psychology. Humans are naturally loss-averse. Studies show that we feel the pain of losing something more intensely than we feel the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. This makes us cling to what we have already spent, even when it would be smarter to cut our losses. We would rather throw good money after bad, rather than admit the first loss and move on. We keep watching movies we are not enjoying because we already paid for the ticket. We stay in relationships that no longer make us happy because we have invested years into them. We persist with projects that are failing because we feel that all the past effort would be wasted if we stop. The sunk cost trap also ties into our sense of identity and pride. When we commit to something, it becomes part of our story, about who we are. Admitting that it is not working can feel like admitting personal failure. We fear judgment from others and from ourselves. We want to believe that our past choices were wise, and so we double down on them, hoping to eventually turn things around and justify the original decision. This can lead to even greater losses, deeper regret, and more entanglement over time. One of the most famous real-world examples of the sunk cost trap is in business and government. Large companies and organizations sometimes continue funding failing projects because they have already poured millions or even billions of dollars into them. Canceling the project would mean admitting that the investment was a mistake. Leaders fear the backlash and the embarrassment, so they keep going, hoping for a turnaround that often never comes. This pattern has led to massive financial disasters and wasted resources that could have been avoided if decision-makers were able to separate past investments from future possibilities. But the sunk cost trap does not just happen at the grand scale. It happens to all of us in everyday life. Maybe you buy an expensive gym membership and realize you hate going there, but you keep forcing yourself to go just because you paid for it. Maybe you order food at a restaurant, realize you do not like it, but eat it anyway because you do not want to feel like you wasted your money. Maybe you start reading a book that bores you, but you insist on finishing it because you are already halfway through. In each of these cases, the rational thing would be to stop, cut the loss, and move on to something better. But the emotional pull of past investment keeps us stuck. Breaking free from the sunk cost trap starts with awareness. Recognizing when you are making a decision based on past investment rather than future value is the first step. Ask yourself, if I had not already invested time, money, or energy into this, would I still choose to continue? If the answer is no, that is a strong signal that the sunk cost trap might be at work. It can also help to reframe quitting not as failure, but as a smart, courageous move. Choosing to stop investing in something that no longer serves you is an act of strength and wisdom, not weakness. It is important to remember that sunk costs are part of life. Everyone makes investments that do not pay off. Everyone spends time and energy on things that turn out differently than expected. That does not mean those experiences were worthless. They often teach valuable lessons, but clinging to them out of stubbornness or fear of loss only compounds the original cost. True resilience is about being willing to let go when necessary and focus on what can still be built, achieved, or discovered. Understanding the sunk cost trap reminds us that good decisions are forward-looking. They are based on what will bring value, joy, or fulfillment in the future, not on trying to justify the past. Every moment offers a fresh chance to choose wisely. The past is gone, but the future is open, and freeing ourselves from the weight of sunk costs allows us to move forward lighter, smarter, and more fully alive. You Are Stardust is not just a beautiful metaphor. It is a scientific fact. Every atom in your body, every element that makes up your bones, your blood, your brain, was created long before you were born, forged in the heart of ancient stars. Stars are not just points of light in the night sky. They are cosmic furnaces, nuclear engines where hydrogen atoms fuse together under immense pressure and temperature to create heavier elements. In the earliest days of the universe, there was only hydrogen, helium, and a little bit of lithium. The heavier elements, carbon, oxygen, iron, calcium, were born later, deep inside stars that lived, burned, and eventually died. When a massive star reaches the end of its life, it can no longer sustain the nuclear reactions that keep it stable. Gravity wins, crushing the star's core and triggering a spectacular explosion called a supernova. In that violent death, the star scatters its enriched material across the universe, seeding the cosmos with the building blocks for new stars, new planets, and eventually, new life. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, all of it was created in the cores of stars that exploded billions of years ago. Those atoms traveled across space, mixed into gas clouds, formed new stars and planets, and eventually found their way into you. This realization changes the way we think about our place in the universe. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are a part of it in the most literal sense. The atoms that form you have journeyed through unimaginable distances and timescales. They have been part of ancient stars, perhaps part of other worlds long lost to time, and now they have come together to form a living, thinking being capable of wondering where they came from. The universe created you, and through you, it has become aware of itself. The idea that you are stardust connects you to everything else around you. It connects you to the earth beneath your feet, the trees around you, the animals, the oceans, and even the air. Everything you see, everything you touch, and everything you are is made of the same cosmic material. The difference between a tree and a human and a rock is not the basic stuff they are made of, but the way that stuff is arranged. At the atomic level, The universe is a vast dance of particles, combining, separating, and recombining in endless variations. Life is one of those incredible variations, a way for stardust to organize itself into something that can think, feel, and dream. Understanding that you are made of stardust can shift your perspective on life's challenges and struggles. It reminds you that you are part of something ancient and vast, that your existence is a continuation of processes that began billions of years ago. It can make the everyday worries feel smaller, not because they are unimportant, but because they are framed against the backdrop of a universe that is so much larger than any one moment of difficulty or fear. It can also inspire a deeper sense of gratitude and awe. To be alive, to have consciousness, to experience love, curiosity, creativity, all of that is a rare and precious outcome of cosmic history. The story of Stardust is still unfolding. Our sun, like all stars, will eventually exhaust its fuel and change. It will not explode in a supernova because it is not massive enough, but it will shed its outer layers, creating a beautiful nebula and enriching the space around it with the elements it has created during its life. New stars and planets will form from that material. New forms of life may eventually emerge, carrying forward the cycle of cosmic creation. In this way, the atoms that are part of you now will someday be part of something else, perhaps another world, another living being, another chapter in the universe's story. Scientists continue to study the origins of the elements and the life cycles of stars to better understand how the universe builds itself. Every discovery adds a little more to the profound understanding that we are not outsiders looking in on the cosmos. We are participants in it, products of it, and contributors to its ongoing evolution. The more we learn about the universe, the more it becomes clear that existence itself is a tapestry woven from the remnants of ancient stars. Saying that you are stardust is not a way to make you feel small. It is a way to recognize that you are part of something grand, beautiful, and eternal. Your life is a chapter in a story that began with the first light, a story still being written in the stars above us. You are a collection of ancient atoms, brought together in a form that can experience laughter, sorrow, discovery, and wonder. You are the universe in motion. The stars come to life, a fleeting yet precious expression of cosmic history. When you look up at the night sky, you are looking at your origins. You are seeing the factories where the elements of your body were made. You are seeing your ancestors, in a sense. Not ancestors of blood, but ancestors of matter and energy. The stars are not distant strangers. They are part of you, just as you are part of them. In every heartbeat, in every breath, in every thought, you carry the legacy of stars. You are living proof that from chaos and fire, from dust and time, the universe can create beauty, complexity, and meaning. Sound in space is one of those ideas that captures the imagination because it is so different from what we experience here on Earth. In space, no one can hear you scream, not because the scream isn't loud or dramatic, but because there is no air to carry the sound. Sound, as we understand it, needs a medium to travel through. Here on Earth, that medium is usually air. When you speak, your vocal cords vibrate, pushing air molecules into each other, creating a pressure wave that moves outward until it reaches someone's ear. The ear then interprets those waves as sound. In space, however, there are no molecules packed closely enough together to carry those vibrations. Without air or any dense material, the vibrations just don't move the same way, and so true sound, as we hear it on Earth, simply cannot exist. This silence is one of the most alien and eerie aspects of outer space. In movies, space battles are often depicted with roaring explosions and the dramatic sounds of spacecraft engines. But in reality, even the most violent events in space would occur in complete silence if you were nearby without a radio or another medium to pick up indirect vibrations. A star could explode in a colossal supernova. A planet could be shattered by an impact. And from a human perspective floating nearby, it would all happen without a sound. It is almost impossible for us to imagine because here on Earth, we are constantly surrounded by sound, from the quiet hum of distant traffic to the whisper of the wind in the trees. That does not mean that nothing happens in space that could create something like sound, but it happens in very different ways. There are still waves in space, plasma waves, magnetic waves, and shock waves from solar flares all ripple through the cosmos. Scientists use instruments to convert these waves into something we can hear. In fact, many of the eerie space sounds you can find online are recordings of electromagnetic vibrations that have been translated into audio frequencies that our ears can detect. These are not sound waves traveling through air, but energy waves traveling through charged particles and magnetic fields, transformed into a format we can understand. Listening to them gives a sense of the hidden, alien beauty of space. If you were standing on the surface of the moon during the Apollo missions, you would notice the profound silence surrounding you. When astronauts walked across the lunar surface, their suits protected them from the vacuum of space, but inside their helmets, they could hear each other through radios, and they could hear themselves through vibrations conducted through their suits. If they tapped on their helmet or hit something against their suit, they might feel the vibration, but they wouldn't hear it in the way we normally experience sound, unless it was transmitted through their bodies or equipment. Sound still exists in certain places in space where there is enough material. Inside dense gas clouds, within the atmospheres of planets, and in places like Saturn's thick rings or Jupiter's swirling storms, molecules are packed closely enough that sound can travel. On a planet like Mars, for instance, the atmosphere is much thinner than Earth's, so sounds exist, but they are much softer and lower pitched. NASA's Perseverance rover has actually recorded sounds on Mars, including the whirring of its own wheels and the distant whisper of Martian wind. Though everything sounds a little different because the thin air filters and dampens higher frequencies, the silence of space also has a psychological impact. For astronauts on long missions, the lack of natural environmental sounds can be strange and unsettling. Inside spacecraft, there is noise, fans whirring, air systems humming, but the constant presence of mechanical sound is different from the dynamic and ever-changing sounds of life on Earth. The absence of birdsong, rushing rivers, and human voices creates a sense of isolation that can affect mental health over time. Engineers and psychologists working with space agencies have considered ways to introduce artificial environmental sounds to help counteract the sterile soundscape of space habitats. Understanding that space is silent also changes the way we think about communication beyond our planet. When we send signals to other planets or receive data from distant spacecraft, it all happens through electromagnetic waves, radio waves, light waves, not sound. Our messages travel across the void as beams of energy, not as sound waves. It is a reminder that when we explore space, we are engaging with an environment that operates under different rules from the familiar world we grew up in. The silence of space is also deeply poetic. It strips away the drama and noise that we often associate with powerful events. It reveals a universe that is vast, indifferent, and majestic in ways that are hard to describe. It invites us to imagine what it would be like to float among the stars, surrounded by light and movement, but wrapped in an unbroken, endless silence. The absence of sound does not make space empty or lifeless. On the contrary, it emphasizes the beauty and mystery of a universe filled with forces and phenomena beyond human senses, forces we can study, imagine, and appreciate, even if we cannot hear them the way we hear a bird sing or a river rush. Sound in space, or the lack of it, teaches us something fundamental about reality, that our experiences are always shaped by the conditions of our environment. It reminds us that the universe is bigger and stranger than we often think, and that even something as basic as sound is a rare and precious phenomenon tied to the very specific conditions of our home planet. It makes Earth feel even more special, a tiny, noisy oasis in a vast, silent sea. Reverse thinking is one of the most surprising and powerful ways to solve problems and change outcomes. It is the idea that sometimes doing the opposite of what seems logical or intuitive can actually bring better results. In a world where we are often taught to follow straight paths and clear rules, reverse thinking invites us to flip our assumptions upside down and look at challenges from the opposite direction. It is not about being contrary for the sake of it. It is about recognizing that many problems are stuck precisely because we are applying the same traditional solutions over and over. When you change the angle, when you do the unexpected, new possibilities open up. Throughout history, reverse thinking has led to some of the greatest breakthroughs. In business, one classic example is the idea of free services. It seems counterintuitive to give something valuable away for free, but companies that offer free versions of their products often attract huge audiences and later monetize through premium upgrades, ads, or additional services. In the music industry, when everyone believed that tighter control over content would save sales, some artists instead gave away their music online and built massive, loyal followings. The opposite strategy worked better because it tapped into new behaviors and created new kinds of value that traditional thinking could not. In personal development, reverse thinking can be just as powerful. When people feel stuck in their careers, their first instinct is often to work harder, push more, double down on the same strategies. But sometimes, the better move is to pause, step back, and even do less for a while. Giving yourself space to think and reflect can lead to deeper insights than grinding endlessly toward a goal that no longer fits. If trying harder is not working, trying differently, or even stepping back altogether might be the key to progress. In fitness, people trying to lose weight often fall into the trap of exercising more and eating less to the extreme. But sometimes, the healthier and more sustainable path is to eat more nourishing foods, rest more, and train smarter, not harder. Reverse thinking also plays a huge role in creative fields. Artists, writers, designers, and inventors often find that the best ideas come when they break away from traditional approaches. Instead of asking, "How do I make this better?" they might ask, "What would happen if I made it worse first?" Or, "What if I took everything away and started with almost nothing?" These questions, though they sound backwards, can unlock surprising and original ideas. Great creativity often lives on the other side of abandoning the obvious path and daring to go in the opposite direction. One of the psychological reasons reverse thinking works is that the brain is trained to follow patterns. We are efficient creatures, and once we find a pattern that seems to work, we tend to stick with it. This is helpful most of the time, but it can also blind us to better solutions that lie outside the well-worn tracks. When we consciously practice reverse thinking, we disrupt those patterns. We force the brain to rethink assumptions, challenge biases, and explore territory it normally avoids. This disruption often leads to breakthrough ideas simply because it activates parts of our minds that do not get used in routine problem solving. Reverse thinking can also be incredibly helpful in dealing with people and relationships. If you are trying to persuade someone and your natural instinct is to push harder, sometimes pulling back and listening more is actually more effective. If you're trying to get closer to someone and constant attention is pushing them away, giving them space might draw them nearer. Doing the opposite of your first impulse can shift the dynamic and create room for better connection. It requires humility and patience, but it can change outcomes in ways that direct force never could. In leadership and teamwork, reverse thinking can transform the way groups operate. Traditional leadership often emphasizes control, structure, and top-down decision-making, but many successful modern organizations thrive by flipping this model, by giving teams more autonomy, encouraging experimentation, and allowing bottom-up ideas to shape direction. Instead of telling people exactly what to do, leaders who ask questions, listen deeply, and trust their teams often unlock much greater creativity, motivation, and resilience. Again, doing the opposite of the traditional model yields better results because it aligns more closely with how people naturally thrive. There is, of course, a balance to be struck. Reverse thinking is not about automatically doing the opposite in every situation. It is about using the opposite as a tool, a way to challenge assumptions and open new doors. Sometimes the traditional path is the right one, but many times, especially when we feel stuck, confused, or frustrated, the best move is to flip the script and consider what might happen if we did the very thing we have been avoiding. The beauty of reverse thinking is that it cultivates flexibility. It teaches us that there is rarely only one way to reach a goal. It reminds us that rigid thinking is often the real obstacle, not the situation itself. By considering the opposite, we train ourselves to be more adaptable, more creative, and ultimately more successful. We stop being prisoners of habit and start becoming true problem solvers, capable of seeing opportunities where others see only dead ends. Sometimes, doing the opposite feels risky. It feels uncomfortable to step outside the familiar path, but it is in that discomfort that growth happens. Reverse thinking pushes us into new territory, challenges us to evolve, and opens possibilities we might never have discovered otherwise. When the old ways are not working, when progress feels impossible, when all the obvious answers have been tried and have failed, it might be time to ask the simple but powerful question: what if I tried doing the opposite? Perception is deception is a truth that touches almost every part of life, whether we realize it or not. What we see, hear, feel, and believe often feels completely real, but that does not guarantee that it is accurate. Our senses give us information about the world, but they do not give us the full picture. Instead, they filter, interpret, and even distort reality to create an experience that makes sense to us. The mind does not simply record reality like a camera. It edits, enhances, and fills in the gaps. This means that what we perceive is a version of reality, shaped by our expectations, experiences, and even our hopes and fears. One of the clearest examples of perception being deceptive is in optical illusions. A simple drawing can trick the brain into seeing something that is not really there. A static image can appear to move, a straight line can look curved, and two objects that are the same size can seem wildly different depending on how they are placed. Optical illusions show that the brain makes assumptions about what it is seeing and fills in missing information based on patterns it has learned. Most of the time, these shortcuts are helpful, allowing us to make quick sense of the world. But sometimes, they lead us to see things that are not true. Beyond simple illusions, perception shapes our everyday experiences in deeper ways. Memory, for instance, is highly influenced by perception. We like to think that our memories are accurate recordings of what happened, but in reality, memory is reconstructed each time we recall it. We fill in missing pieces, smooth over inconsistencies, and sometimes even create details that were never there. Two people can witness the same event and walk away with completely different memories, each convinced that their version is the true one. This is not because one person is lying. It is because perception and memory are deeply subjective processes. Emotions also color our perceptions. When we are afraid, the world looks more threatening. When we are happy, everything seems brighter and more welcoming. The same situation can be perceived in completely different ways depending on our emotional state. A crowded room might feel exciting to one person and terrifying to another. A challenging task might look like an opportunity to someone who feels confident and like a disaster waiting to happen to someone who feels insecure. Our emotions do not just influence how we feel about what we perceive. They actually influence what we perceive in the first place. Social perception works in much the same way. Stereotypes and biases can act like invisible lenses, shaping how we see other people before we even truly know them. First impressions can be powerful, but misleading. We might judge someone's competence, kindness, or trustworthiness based on superficial cues like clothing, accent, or body language. Our brains are wired to make quick judgments, but those judgments are often based on incomplete or inaccurate information. Recognizing how easily our perceptions can deceive us is essential for developing empathy, fairness, and open-mindedness. Technology adds another layer to the deception of perception. In the digital age, images and information can be manipulated with ease. Photos can be edited, videos can be staged, news stories can be spun. What we see online feels real because our brains are used to trusting visual evidence. But in reality, digital media can be designed to deceive. The rise of deepfake technology, where videos can be altered to make people appear to say or do things they never did, only heightens this challenge. In a world where seeing is no longer believing, critical thinking becomes more important than ever. Even our sense of time is subject to deceptive perception. Time can seem to fly or crawl depending on what we are doing and how we feel. A joyful day can pass in a heartbeat, while a stressful meeting can feel endless. Our brains do not measure time objectively. They measure it through experience, attention, and emotion. In moments of danger, time can seem to slow down because our brains take in more details, creating the illusion of stretched time. In routine moments where little new information is processed, time seems to compress. Our experience of time is another reminder that what feels real is not always a direct reflection of reality. Understanding that perception is deception is not about becoming cynical or distrusting everything. It is about becoming aware. It is about realizing that our experience of the world is a construction, not a mirror. With awareness comes the ability to question our first impressions, to look deeper, to be more curious, and less judgmental. It also brings humility, the recognition that our view is always limited, and that other people's perceptions, though different, are just as real and valid to them. Recognizing the gap between perception and reality also opens the door to growth. If we accept that we do not see everything as it truly is, then we are more open to learning, to changing, and to expanding our understanding. We are less likely to cling stubbornly to assumptions and more willing to explore new perspectives. We become better listeners, better thinkers, and more compassionate human beings. Perception is deception, but it is also what makes life rich and complex. Every person lives inside a slightly different version of reality, shaped by their own perceptions. Embracing this idea means accepting the mystery and beauty of human experience. It means recognizing that truth is often bigger and more complicated than any one viewpoint can capture. And it reminds us that while our senses guide us through the world, it is our awareness, curiosity, and humility that help us see more clearly. Fear hijacks logic in ways that are often invisible until we step back and reflect. When fear kicks in, the rational part of the brain, the part responsible for careful thinking, weighing options, and making deliberate decisions, takes a back seat. In its place, the brain's more primitive survival systems rush to the front, making decisions based on instinct rather than reason. This reaction made sense for our ancestors, facing immediate physical threats like predators or natural disasters. Quick, decisive action could mean the difference between life and death. But in modern life, where threats are often more psychological than physical, the same ancient response can lead us to think and act irrationally in ways that hurt rather than help us. The center of this hijacking process is the amygdala, a small, almond-shaped part of the brain, deep within the temporal lobes. The amygdala acts as a kind of early warning system, scanning the environment for signs of danger. When it perceives a threat, it can trigger a fear response in milliseconds, often before the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, has had a chance to fully assess the situation. Heart rate increases, adrenaline floods the system, muscles tense, and attention narrows sharply onto the perceived threat. In moments of real danger, this response is incredibly effective. But in everyday life, when we are facing things like public speaking, job interviews, or social conflicts, the same system can cause us to overreact, misjudge, or shut down critical thinking altogether. Fear not only speeds up our responses, but also distorts our perceptions. When we are afraid, we tend to overestimate the threat and underestimate our ability to handle it. We see risks as larger and more catastrophic than they are, and we miss alternative solutions that might be obvious when we are calm. Fear narrows our mental focus onto worst-case scenarios, causing us to ignore positive outcomes or creative possibilities. This tunnel vision can lead to poor decision-making, where we choose the safest, most immediate escape from discomfort, rather than the best long-term solution. One common example of fear hijacking logic is seen in high-pressure performance situations. Athletes, musicians, speakers, and test takers can experience a phenomenon known as choking under pressure. They know their material or skill set inside and out during practice, but when fear of failure creeps in, their performance deteriorates. The fear response causes overthinking, hesitation, and a loss of fluid, automatic action. Instead of trusting their training and skills, their minds get tangled in anxiety, leading to mistakes they would not normally make. Fear also influences group behavior. In moments of collective fear, crowds can behave in ways that seem irrational from the outside. Panic can spread quickly, leading to stampedes, hoarding behavior, or the breakdown of social order. When fear is in the air, logical thinking at the group level becomes even harder to maintain. Fear overrides cooperation and thoughtful planning, replacing it with a survival mentality where individuals focus on their own immediate needs above all else. In personal relationships, fear hijacks logic when it comes to trust, conflict, and vulnerability. Fear of rejection, fear of being hurt, fear of losing control. These emotions can cause people to withdraw, lash out, or sabotage connections that could otherwise grow into something meaningful. Instead of calmly addressing misunderstandings or insecurities, fear-driven behavior often escalates conflicts, creating self-fulfilling cycles of mistrust and pain. Rationally, we might know that communicating openly is the best course, but fear makes it incredibly difficult to act on that knowledge. Recognizing that fear hijacks logic is the first step toward regaining control. Self-awareness allows us to pause when we notice fear rising, to take a breath and give the rational brain time to catch up. Techniques like mindfulness, grounding exercises, and slow, deep breathing help shift the nervous system out of fight or flight mode and back into a state where logical thinking is possible again. Naming the fear, literally putting it into words, can also help. Studies show that labeling emotions reduces their intensity in the brain, giving us a little more space to think clearly. Preparation and practice can also reduce the power of fear. The more familiar we are with a situation, the less threatening it feels. By visualizing positive outcomes, rehearsing calmly, and breaking challenges into smaller steps, we can train the brain to perceive situations as manageable rather than overwhelming. Building small successes over time strengthens confidence and reduces the automatic fear response in similar future situations. It is important to remember that fear itself is not the enemy. Fear is a necessary, protective emotion that has helped humans survive for thousands of years. But when fear takes over unchecked, when it hijacks our ability to think critically and act wisely, it becomes a barrier instead of a shield. Understanding how fear operates empowers us to respond differently, to recognize when our perception is being distorted, and to choose more thoughtful, deliberate actions even in the face of discomfort. Fear will always be part of the human experience. There is no escaping it, and in fact, we would not want to live without it, but we can learn to work with it rather than be ruled by it. We can learn to pause, to question our first reactions, and to bring logic and perspective back into the conversation. In doing so, we turn fear from a master into a messenger, one voice among many, but not the one that decides our fate. Decision fatigue is one of those hidden forces that can quietly drain our energy and cloud our judgment without us even realizing it. It happens when we are faced with too many choices over the course of a day, leading our brains to become exhausted from the constant effort of making decisions. Even simple choices, like what to eat for breakfast or which shirt to wear, draw on our mental resources. Over time, as decision after decision piles up, the brain starts to struggle. It becomes harder to think clearly, to weigh options properly, and to make good judgments. When decision fatigue sets in, people are more likely to avoid making decisions altogether, to make impulsive choices, or to fall back on the easiest option rather than the best one. The human brain has a limited amount of mental energy available for self-control and careful thinking each day. Every decision we make, whether it is big or small, uses up a little bit of that energy. Early in the day, when the brain is fresh, we are better at evaluating options, considering consequences, and making thoughtful choices. But as the day goes on, and more decisions are made, our mental resources get depleted. By evening, even small decisions can feel overwhelming. That is why people are more likely to order fast food, skip the gym, or procrastinate on important tasks later in the day. It is not just laziness, it is a real mental phenomenon where the brain's capacity for decision-making has been worn down. One famous study on decision fatigue involved judges in courtrooms. Researchers found that judges were far more likely to grant parole early in the day or right after a food break, and much more likely to deny parole as the day wore on. The more decisions the judges made, the more mentally fatigued they became, and the more they defaulted to the safest, simplest decision, denying parole. This study highlights how decision fatigue can have serious consequences, affecting fairness, performance, and even the course of people's lives. In daily life, decision fatigue can creep up on anyone. The modern world bombards us with endless choices. From the moment we wake up, we are faced with hundreds of decisions, both big and small. What should I wear? What should I have for breakfast? Should I check my email now or later? Which route should I take to work? What should I reply to this text? By the time we get to work or start our day's major activities, a significant portion of our mental energy has already been used up on trivial decisions. This leaves less fuel in the tank for the bigger, more important choices we need to make. Retailers and marketers understand the effects of decision fatigue very well. Stores are carefully designed to present shoppers with a wide array of options, especially near checkout lines, knowing that tired decision makers are more likely to make impulsive purchases. Online platforms constantly push notifications, ads, and recommendations to keep people making little decisions and clicking endlessly, knowing that tired brains are more suggestible and less likely to critically evaluate what they are seeing. One way people try to combat decision fatigue is by reducing the number of trivial decisions they have to make. This is why some highly productive individuals, like Steve Jobs and Barack Obama, famously wore the same or similar outfits every day. By eliminating small daily choices about clothing, they preserved their mental energy for more important decisions. Simplifying routines, automating certain parts of life, and building habits can all help protect against decision fatigue by reducing the number of decisions that need to be made consciously each day. Another powerful tool for managing decision fatigue is planning, making decisions ahead of time, such as meal prepping for the week, setting a fixed workout schedule, or blocking out time for important tasks, reduces the number of decisions you need to make in the moment when your brain is already tired. Planning creates a structure that frees you from constant, draining choice-making throughout the day. It is also crucial to recognize the signs of decision fatigue when they appear. Feeling unusually irritable, overwhelmed, or impulsive can be clues that your brain is running low on decision-making energy. When that happens, it is wise to take a break, have a snack, rest, or postpone major decisions if possible. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a way of respecting the real limits of your mental resources. Understanding decision fatigue also builds compassion, both for ourselves and for others. It reminds us that poor decisions are not always about bad character or weak willpower. Sometimes they are simply the result of a tired mind pushed past its limits. Recognizing that allows us to create environments, both personal and professional, that support better decision-making. It encourages leaders to space out major decisions, to avoid overwhelming teams with too many choices at once, and to build systems that make the best choices easier, not harder. At its core, decision fatigue shows us that even our most powerful tool, our mind, needs care, structure, and support. It reminds us that mental energy is finite and precious. By being mindful of the choices we face, by simplifying where we can, by planning thoughtfully, and by giving ourselves the grace to step back when needed, we protect our ability to make wise, intentional decisions. In a world that constantly demands more and more choices from us, learning to manage decision fatigue is not just a productivity hack. It is a survival skill for living well and thinking clearly. Multiverse theory is one of the most fascinating and mind-bending ideas in all of science and philosophy. It suggests that every decision you make could split reality into different branches, each one representing a different outcome. Instead of there being one single universe where everything plays out along one fixed timeline, there could be countless universes, each one following a different path based on every choice, every chance, every random event. In one universe, you decided to move to a new city. In another, you stayed. In one world, you said yes to a job offer. In another, you said no. Each decision, big or small, could create a new thread of existence, each as real and vivid as the one you're experiencing right now. The idea of the multiverse first gained serious attention in the world of quantum physics. In the 1950s, physicist Hugh Everett proposed the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. He suggested that when a quantum event has multiple possible outcomes, all outcomes actually happen, but in different universes. Instead of the universe choosing one path, it splits, with each possibility realized in a separate branch. This was a radical departure from the traditional view that only one outcome becomes real. Everett's idea faced resistance at first, but over time, many physicists have come to take it seriously, especially as quantum experiments continue to show that particles behave in ways that seem to support the idea of multiple outcomes existing simultaneously. If the multiverse is real, it means that reality is far bigger and stranger than anything we have ever imagined. Every possibility you can think of, and even countless ones you cannot, is played out somewhere. There could be a version of you who took up painting, one who became a scientist, one who moved to another country, one who lived an entirely different life because of one small, seemingly insignificant decision. Some universes might be almost identical to ours, with only tiny differences, while others could be wildly different, shaped by different physical laws, different histories, and different kinds of life. This idea naturally raises deep questions about identity and free will. If every possible version of you exists somewhere, what does it mean to be you? Are you just one branch among millions? Or are you special because of the choices you are aware of and living right now? Multiverse theory suggests that while all versions of you exist, your consciousness is riding a single thread at a time, experiencing one version of reality while all others unfold elsewhere, unseen and unreachable. It is a humbling thought because it reminds us how vast and complex existence might truly be, and how the life we experience is just one of countless variations. Multiverse theory also has a way of making every decision feel both more important and less heavy at the same time. On the one hand, knowing that each choice could lead to a new universe gives a sense of incredible significance to every moment. Each path you choose becomes the starting point of an entire new reality. On the other hand, if all possibilities are played out somewhere, it suggests that there is no final, perfect path to worry about. Every choice leads to a different kind of life, with its own challenges and rewards. There is no wrong choice, just different experiences unfolding in different branches of existence. Philosophically, the multiverse can also be comforting. It means that somewhere, every dream you ever had has come true. Somewhere, every regret you carry was avoided. Somewhere you made the perfect choice at every crossroads. And somewhere else, you made mistakes and still found happiness. The idea that reality contains all outcomes offers a broader, more forgiving view of life. One that embraces not just success, but also failure, not just joy, but also sorrow, as natural parts of the vast tapestry of existence. Scientifically, the multiverse remains a hypothesis, not yet proven or disproven. Some theories in cosmology suggest that inflation, the rapid expansion of space in the early moments of the universe, could naturally produce multiple bubble universes, each with its own properties. String theory, which seeks to unify all the forces of nature, also hints at the existence of many universes with different configurations. But so far, there is no direct experimental evidence for other universes, and many scientists debate whether the multiverse can ever be tested at all. It might remain a powerful idea, forever just beyond the reach of proof, challenging our understanding of what science can and cannot explore. In popular culture, the multiverse has captured the imagination because it taps into something deeply human, the longing to know what might have been. Stories about alternate realities, parallel lives, and different worlds allow us to explore the roads not taken in our own lives. They invite us to imagine not only different versions of ourselves, but also different ways the world could be. Worlds where history took a different turn, where science and technology evolved differently, where new possibilities are waiting around every corner. Multiverse theory reminds us that the universe is not limited to what we see and know. It invites us to think bigger, to imagine more freely, and to embrace the mystery of existence. Whether or not multiple universes truly exist, the idea itself is a celebration of possibility. It challenges us to live fully in the reality we experience, knowing that this version of life, with all its twists and turns, is a precious and unique thread in the vast, unseen fabric of everything that could be. The Antimatter Mystery is one of the great unsolved puzzles of the universe. Every particle we know, electrons, protons, neutrons, has a mirror twin called an antiparticle. These antiparticles are identical in mass but opposite in charge. An electron has a negative charge, so its mirror twin, the positron, has a positive charge. A proton is positive, while an antiproton is negative. The strange thing is, when matter and antimatter meet, they annihilate each other in a burst of pure energy. Based on everything we know about the early universe, matter and antimatter should have been created in equal amounts at the moment of the Big Bang. In theory, they should have completely destroyed each other, leaving behind a universe filled only with light and energy, with no solid matter to form stars, planets, or people. And yet, here we are, living in a universe made almost entirely of matter. The big question is, where did all the antimatter go? Scientists have spent decades trying to answer this mystery. If matter and antimatter were truly created equally, something must have tipped the balance, favoring matter just slightly. Even a tiny asymmetry, one extra particle of matter for every billion pairs of matter and antimatter, would be enough to explain why matter survived and antimatter did not. But finding evidence of this imbalance has proven incredibly difficult. Experiments in particle accelerators, like the Large Hadron Collider, have tried to detect subtle differences in how matter and antimatter behave. But so far, the differences found have been too small to fully account for the matter-dominated universe we live in. Antimatter is not just a theoretical idea. Scientists have created and studied antimatter particles in laboratories. Positrons, the antimatter counterparts of electrons, are routinely used in medical imaging, particularly in PET scans. Antiprotons have been produced in high-energy collisions. In fact, entire atoms of antihydrogen, an antiproton orbited by a positron, have been made and briefly trapped in magnetic fields. But making antimatter is extremely difficult and expensive. It takes enormous amounts of energy to create even a tiny number of antiparticles, and trapping them before they annihilate with ordinary matter is a monumental challenge. Antimatter is real, but it is vanishingly rare in our everyday world. Some scientists have proposed that maybe there are regions of the universe made entirely of antimatter. Maybe, far beyond the reach of our telescopes, there are antimatter galaxies, stars, and planets. In these regions, life, if it exists, would be made of antiparticles, and if we ever met them, contact would be catastrophic, as matter and antimatter would annihilate on contact. However, if large antimatter regions existed close to us, we would expect to see telltale signs, such as powerful gamma rays from matter-antimatter collisions along the borders of matter and antimatter regions. So far, we have not detected such signals, suggesting that if antimatter regions do exist, they must be extremely distant or somehow completely isolated from us. Another idea is that the laws of physics might not be perfectly symmetrical between matter and antimatter. Tiny differences in how particles and antiparticles decay, called CP violation, have been observed in experiments involving certain types of particles called mesons. These differences hint that nature might favor matter over antimatter ever so slightly. But again, the observed effects are too small to fully explain the overwhelming dominance of matter in the universe. Some physicists are searching for new, undiscovered particles or forces that could have created a larger asymmetry early in cosmic history, tipping the scales decisively in favor of matter. The mystery of antimatter is more than just an interesting scientific puzzle. It touches on the deepest questions about why anything exists at all. If matter and antimatter had been perfectly balanced, we would not be here. There would be no galaxies, no stars, no planets, no life. The fact that we live in a universe filled with matter suggests that something extraordinary happened in the earliest moments of creation, something that broke the symmetry and allowed matter to win. Understanding that event could unlock secrets about the origin of the universe, the nature of the laws of physics, and the fate of everything we know. Antimatter also holds incredible potential for the future. In theory, matter-antimatter annihilation releases enormous amounts of energy, far more than chemical reactions or even nuclear fission and fusion. A small amount of antimatter could produce vast amounts of power. This has led to dreams of antimatter-powered spacecraft that could one day travel to the stars. Science fiction often imagines antimatter engines propelling ships across the galaxy. In reality, producing and storing enough antimatter to use as fuel is far beyond our current technology. But the dream remains, and research continues, driven by the incredible possibilities that antimatter offers. In many ways, the Antimatter Mystery reminds us how much we still do not know about the universe. It shows that even with all our knowledge, there are still profound gaps in our understanding, deep questions that have no easy answers. It humbles us, challenges us, and inspires us to keep exploring. Somewhere, hidden in the tiny differences between matter and antimatter, might lie the key to understanding why the universe exists, why we are here, and what the true nature of reality might be. Every particle has a mirror twin, a perfect opposite that we can create and study, but that somehow vanished from the grand stage of cosmic history. Where did they go? What tipped the balance? These are the questions that drive physicists, astronomers, and dreamers alike. The search for answers continues. One experiment, one discovery, and one moment of wonder at a time. Emotional memories last longer because feelings act like glue, binding experiences deeply into the brain. When something important happens to us, the emotional weight of the moment triggers a series of reactions in the body and mind that make it far more likely we will remember it for years, even for a lifetime. It is not simply the event itself that becomes unforgettable, but the emotions wrapped around it. Our brains are wired to prioritize emotional experiences, treating them as signals that what happened matters for our survival, our well-being, or our identity. Whether it is the joy of a first love, the pride of an accomplishment, or the fear of a traumatic event, the emotions associated with these moments create strong, lasting memories that ordinary, emotionless events rarely achieve. This connection between emotion and memory is deeply rooted in brain biology. The amygdala, an almond-shaped structure nestled deep within the brain, plays a central role in processing emotions. When something emotionally charged happens, the amygdala activates and interacts with the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for forming new memories. This collaboration between the emotional and memory centers ensures that experiences rich in feeling are stamped more firmly into our neural pathways. It is as if the brain takes special care to underline these memories, tagging them as important to revisit, learn from, or avoid repeating. Interestingly, it does not matter whether the emotion is positive or negative. Both joyful and painful experiences can be equally sticky in the mind. A wonderful vacation, a personal achievement, or the birth of a child can stay vivid for decades. Likewise, a betrayal, a failure, or a terrifying experience can be just as enduring. In both cases, the intensity of the emotion signals to the brain that this experience is significant. It needs to be remembered because it might carry important lessons for the future. What to seek, what to avoid, how to behave, how to survive. Studies have shown that emotional memories are not only more durable, but also more detailed. People can often recall where they were, what they were wearing, who was there, even small sensory details like smells and sounds, all tied to the emotional impact of the moment. These memories are sometimes called flashbulb memories because they seem to capture a scene with vivid clarity, like a camera flash freezing a moment in time. However, it is important to note that while emotional memories feel more vivid and detailed, they are not always more accurate. The emotional intensity can actually distort certain aspects of the memory, exaggerating some parts while fading others, but the feeling of certainty remains strong. The durability of emotional memories has a powerful impact on who we become. Our sense of identity is often built around the emotional highs and lows we have experienced. We remember the teachers who encouraged us, the friends who stood by us, the moments when we felt completely alive or deeply broken. These emotional memories shape our beliefs, our fears, our desires, and even our behavior. They act as guideposts, warning signs, and inspirations that influence how we move through the world. In some cases, emotional memories can be a source of strength. Remembering moments of triumph can boost confidence and motivation. Holding on to memories of love and kindness can foster resilience and hope. Positive emotional memories serve as a reservoir we can draw from in difficult times, but emotional memories can also be a source of pain and limitation. Traumatic memories, especially when intense and unresolved, can haunt people for years, leading to anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. These memories can feel just as raw and real decades later as they did in the moment, showing how deeply emotion embeds experience into the mind. Therapies that address emotional memory, such as EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or cognitive behavioral therapy, often work by helping individuals revisit and reframe painful memories. By processing the emotions tied to the memory, people can begin to loosen its grip and reduce its power. This suggests that while emotional memories are sticky, they are not entirely unchangeable. With effort and support, the brain can reshape its relationship to past events, finding new meaning and healing where once there was only pain. On a broader level, understanding that feelings glue memories into the brain gives insight into why storytelling, rituals, celebrations, and ceremonies are so powerful across cultures. These experiences are rich in emotion and therefore rich in memory. They help societies transmit values, history, and identity from generation to generation. A wedding, a graduation, a national holiday, all are designed to evoke strong feelings, creating lasting memories that bind communities together. For individuals, knowing that emotional moments stick can inspire us to live more intentionally. We can seek out experiences that create meaningful, positive memories, rather than letting life slip by in a blur of routine. We can also be more mindful of the emotional impact we have on others, realizing that a kind word, a hurtful comment, a moment of compassion, or a betrayal might be remembered long after the moment passes. Emotions magnify memory, and every interaction has the potential to become a part of someone else's permanent story. Emotional memories last longer because our brains are designed to care deeply about experiences that move us. They are the bookmarks of our lives, marking chapters of love, loss, growth, and change. They remind us that living fully means feeling fully, even when it is uncomfortable. And they teach us that memory is not just a record of what happened, but a reflection of what mattered most. Split-brain oddities reveal some of the most fascinating and strange truths about the human mind. When the two halves of the brain are disconnected, it can feel as if two separate minds emerge within the same person. Under normal conditions, the left and right hemispheres of the brain communicate constantly through a thick bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. This bridge allows the two sides to share information rapidly and seamlessly, giving us the sense of having a unified consciousness. But when that bridge is severed, as it sometimes is during surgery to treat severe epilepsy, the two halves can no longer talk to each other in the usual way. What scientists have discovered by studying these split-brain patients is both fascinating and deeply unsettling because it challenges everything we think we know about the nature of the self. Each hemisphere of the brain has specialized strengths. In most people, the left hemisphere is dominant for language, logic, and analytical thinking, while the right hemisphere excels at spatial awareness, emotional processing, and recognizing faces. Under normal conditions, these specializations blend together seamlessly, but when the corpus callosum is cut, each hemisphere starts to operate more independently, and the differences between them become more obvious. In classic experiments, researchers would present images or words to just one side of the brain, because the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere controls the left side. it was possible to deliver information to one hemisphere without the other knowing. The results were incredible. For example, if a word was flashed to the right hemisphere, which in most people does not control speech, the person could not verbally say what they saw. But if given a pencil in their left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere, they could draw the object. The right brain knew what it had seen, but because it could not use language, it could not explain it in words. Meanwhile, the left brain, which handles speech, would often make up a story to explain the drawing, even though it had not actually seen the image. This showed that each hemisphere could have its own perceptions, its own thoughts, and even its own awareness, separate from the other. In some cases, split-brain patients showed behaviors that almost seemed like two separate wills operating inside the same person. One hand might button up a shirt, while the other hand unbuttoned it. One hand might pick up an object that the other hand then tried to put down. It was as if two different selves were sharing the same body, each with its own goals and ideas. These moments reveal how much of our sense of being a single, unified self depends on the constant communication between the brain's two halves. When that communication is disrupted, the unity of consciousness begins to unravel. One of the most famous split-brain patients, a man known as Joe, participated in a series of experiments that highlighted these strange effects. In one test, a picture of a chicken claw was shown to Joe's left hemisphere, and a picture of a snowy scene was shown to his right hemisphere. When asked to point to related pictures with each hand, his right hand pointed to a chicken, and his left hand pointed to a snow shovel. When asked why he pointed to the shovel, Joe's speaking left hemisphere, which had not seen the snowy scene, quickly invented an explanation, saying something like, "Oh, the shovel is for cleaning out the chicken coop." His brain did not register confusion. Instead, it simply made up a story to explain behavior it did not fully understand. These findings have profound implications for our understanding of consciousness. They suggest that what we experience as a single, unified mind is actually a delicate integration of multiple systems, constantly working together. Consciousness is not something that exists in one place in the brain. It is a process, a collaboration between parts that can break down under certain conditions. This also raises philosophical questions about the nature of selfhood and free will. If two separate streams of consciousness can exist within one brain, what does that say about the true nature of the I that we all feel? Interestingly, split-brain patients do not typically feel as if they are two people. Day to day, they live relatively normal lives. Their two hemispheres still have access to most of the same sensory information, and they have learned to adapt. But under experimental conditions designed to isolate the hemispheres, the hidden divisions become clear. It is a reminder that much of what happens in our minds happens below the level of conscious awareness, and that our sense of unity is a brilliant, fragile illusion created by the brain's communication networks. Research into split-brain patients has also influenced how we think about the division of labor between the brain's hemispheres. It turns out that the idea of being strictly left-brained or right-brained is an oversimplification. Both hemispheres are involved in most tasks, and the brain constantly integrates information across both sides. Even creativity, often labeled as a right brain function, involves the analytical left hemisphere in important ways. The split brain studies do not show that each hemisphere is a complete mind on its own. Rather, they reveal how deeply interdependent the two sides are, and how much our unified experience of life depends on their constant collaboration. Split-brain oddities show us that the brain is not just a biological organ, but a complex dynamic system that constructs the experience of being a self. They remind us that consciousness is not a simple on-off switch, but a layered, fragile phenomenon, woven from the interactions of many parts. They invite us to marvel at the mystery of how the brain turns matter into mind, and to appreciate the incredible, intricate unity that makes each of us feel like one person moving through one life, even when deep down there is so much more going on beneath the surface. The color blue is rare in nature, and once you start looking for it, you realize just how unusual it really is. True blue pigments barely exist in the natural world. Unlike colors like green, brown, red, and yellow, which are found easily in plants, animals, and minerals, blue is almost shockingly absent. When we do see blue in nature, it often is not because of a pigment at all, but because of a trick of physics, an optical illusion created by the way surfaces interact with light. It is a beautiful deception, and it shows how special and mysterious the color blue truly is. In most plants and animals, the colors we see come from pigments, chemical compounds that absorb certain wavelengths of light and reflect others. Chlorophyll, for example, gives plants their green color by absorbing red and blue light and reflecting green. Carotenoids produce yellow and orange colors in carrots and autumn leaves. Melanin gives skin, hair, and feathers their shades of brown and black. But finding a true blue pigment is extremely difficult. Nature rarely produces compounds that reflect only blue wavelengths. Instead, when we see something that looks blue, like a blue jay or a butterfly wing, it is usually the result of structural coloration. Structural coloration happens when microscopic structures interfere with light. These tiny, complex surfaces bend and scatter light in such a way that only certain wavelengths reach our eyes. The blue morpho butterfly, for example, appears a brilliant, shimmering blue, not because of blue pigment, but because its wing scales have microscopic ridges that manipulate light. When sunlight hits the wings, the structures amplify blue wavelengths while canceling out others. The color is real to our eyes, but it is created by structure, not by chemistry. If you were to grind up a blue morpho butterfly's wings, the resulting powder would not be blue at all. It would be dull and brownish because the special structure would be destroyed. The same trick explains the vivid blue feathers of a bluebird or the iridescent sheen of a peacock. Their feathers contain no blue pigment. Instead, layers of microscopic structures scatter light to create the illusion of blue. Even the sky itself is not blue because of pigment, but because of a phenomenon called Rayleigh scattering. Molecules in the atmosphere scatter shorter blue wavelengths of sunlight more than longer red wavelengths, making the sky appear blue to human eyes. True blue pigments are so rare that throughout human history, finding blue materials has been a challenge. Ancient civilizations prized blue stones like lapis lazuli, which was mined in Afghanistan and traded across continents. It was so precious that in medieval Europe, ultramarine, a pigment made from ground lapis lazuli, was more valuable than gold. Artists would reserve ultramarine for the most important subjects, like the robes of the Virgin Mary in religious paintings. Other blue pigments, like indigo from plants or synthetic blues developed later, were highly sought after because blue had become a symbol of the divine, the infinite, and the unreachable. Even today, creating durable, vivid blue pigments remains difficult. It was only in 2009 that scientists at Oregon State University accidentally discovered a new, stable blue pigment called Y-in-ene blue. while experimenting with materials for electronics. It was the first new blue pigment created in 2 centuries, and its discovery was celebrated not just for its beauty, but for its rarity and stability. The difficulty of finding and producing blue pigments only adds to the color's mystique. The rarity of blue in nature may also explain why humans have such a special relationship with the color. Across cultures, blue is often associated with peace, calm, trust, and depth. The endless blue of the sky and the vast blue of the ocean create a sense of wonder and expansiveness. Blue represents the infinite, the mysterious, the eternal. Perhaps because it is not easily found in the everyday natural world, blue feels otherworldly, a color of dreams and imagination. Psychologists have studied how blue affects human behavior and emotion. It is often described as a cool, soothing color. Studies suggest that blue environments can lower heart rate and create a sense of calm. Many tech companies use blue in their branding to convey trustworthiness and stability. Hospitals and health organizations often use shades of blue to create a sense of cleanliness and professionalism. The emotional power of blue runs deep, woven into the way we perceive the world and ourselves. The rarity of true blue also invites reflection on how we perceive color in general. What we see is not just a direct reflection of the world, but a collaboration between the physical properties of objects and the way our eyes and brains interpret light. Color is not an inherent property of things. It is an experience created by light, matter, and mind. Blue reminds us that perception is a creative act, that beauty often arises not from simple ingredients, but from complex, delicate interactions. In a universe filled with endless colors, blue stands apart as something rare and precious. It challenges nature to invent clever tricks just to produce it. It challenges artists and scientists to seek and create it. It challenges our imaginations to reach beyond the ordinary towards something deeper and more profound. Blue is the color of distant mountains, of deep oceans, of endless skies, and of mysteries that we are still trying to understand. Every time we see it, we are witnessing something rare, something remarkable, a flash of brilliance that nature had to work extra hard to create. The brain can't multitask in the way most people think it can. We like to imagine that we are capable of handling 2 or 3 tasks at once, moving effortlessly from one activity to another without losing any focus or efficiency. In reality, what the brain is doing when it seems to multitask is rapidly switching between tasks, not handling them simultaneously. Every time we jump from one task to another, our attention splits, and both tasks suffer. Instead of doing 2 things at once, the brain is doing a little of one, then a little of the other, constantly shifting focus and losing time and energy in the process. This rapid switching comes with a cost. Studies have shown that people who try to multitask take longer to complete tasks, make more mistakes, and retain less information compared to when they focus on one task at a time. The act of switching itself uses up mental energy. Each time the brain transitions from one context to another, it has to reorient itself, recall what it was doing, and refocus attention. This is called switching cost, and even though it might feel quick, it adds up. Over the course of a day, all those tiny moments of mental adjustment accumulate, making multitaskers less efficient than those who concentrate on one thing at a time. One of the biggest victims of multitasking is deep thinking. Complex tasks that require critical thinking, creativity, or careful analysis are particularly sensitive to interruptions. When the brain is pulled away from deep work, it cannot simply pick up where it left off. It has to retrace its steps, rebuild the mental structures it was forming, and sometimes start almost from scratch. This is why checking emails, messages, or notifications while trying to work on a big project can be so damaging. Each interruption might seem harmless, but it can derail your focus and make the work much harder than it needs to be. Multitasking also affects memory. When we split our attention between tasks, we are less likely to encode information into long-term memory. This means that multitasking students might find that they can skim through reading assignments or listen to lectures while texting, but later realize they have not really absorbed much of what they were supposed to learn. Attention is a crucial gateway to memory, and without full attention, the brain struggles to process and store information effectively. Even activities that seem simple can fall victim to the myth of multitasking. Eating while watching TV, texting while walking, or talking on the phone while cooking might not seem like a big deal, but these combinations increase the chances of errors, missed details, or accidents. In some cases, the consequences can be serious. Texting while driving, for example, is a dangerous form of multitasking that dramatically increases the risk of accidents. The brain cannot fully pay attention to the road and the phone at the same time, no matter how confident a person might feel about their ability to do both. One of the reasons people believe they can multitask effectively is because of the brain's incredible ability to automate routine tasks. Once a task becomes automatic, like walking, typing, or driving a familiar route, it requires much less conscious attention. This can free up some mental space for light secondary activities. But even then, the brain's attention is limited. If something unexpected happens, like a pedestrian stepping into the street or a car braking suddenly, the brain must quickly shift full attention back to the primary task. If attention is locked elsewhere, the delay in reaction can be costly. Multitasking also creates an illusion of productivity. Jumping between emails, meetings, social media, and work projects can feel busy and active, giving the sense that a lot is getting done. But busyness is not the same as productivity. True productivity often comes from focused, sustained attention on one task until it is completed or brought to a natural stopping point. The feeling of doing many things at once can be satisfying in the moment, but it often leads to lower quality work, higher stress levels, and a greater sense of exhaustion by the end of the day. Understanding that the brain cannot truly multitask allows us to rethink how we approach work and daily life. It encourages the practice of single tasking, deliberately focusing on one task at a time with full attention. This not only improves the quality of the work, but also makes the experience of doing it more satisfying. Flow states, those periods of deep immersion, where time seems to disappear and performance peaks, are only possible when attention is undivided. Multitasking destroys the conditions necessary for flow to occur. Building habits that support focus can transform productivity and well-being. Turning off unnecessary notifications, setting aside dedicated time blocks for specific tasks, and creating environments that minimize distractions all help protect the brain's limited attentional resources. It also helps to set clear intentions before starting a task. Knowing exactly what you are focusing on and why makes it easier to resist the temptation to split your attention. In a world that constantly demands more, faster, and now, resisting the pull of multitasking can feel almost rebellious, but it is a rebellion worth embracing. Protecting your attention means protecting your ability to think deeply, work effectively, and live more fully in each moment. The brain cannot multitask, and trying to force it only leads to frustration and fatigue. Embracing single-tasking is not about doing less. It is about doing what matters better, with more clarity, creativity, and satisfaction.